Chapter 721. The 100 Miles Godly Fist used bravery as its bones and strength as its flesh. It was brave and unyielding when fighting with others, fearless. In the past, when Fang Yan and Bai Lilu fought, they were fighting to the death. It looked like they were fighting with their lives on the line. Neither of them would hold back. Fang Yan never thought that Bai Lilu would learn the star-shattering fist after not seeing him for a while. Fang Yan never thought that Bai Lilu would learn to hide his strength during the fight. Was this the Bai Lilu he knew? Was this the Bai Lilu family's man? Fang Yan despised him in his heart. Bai Lilu's punch was unstoppable. Before the punch arrived, the chi came first. Fang Yan's body bent and flew backward, as if he had been struck by a powerful force and collided with a powerful force. Bai Lilu's body was still in the charging position. His body was still flying in the air, and his fist was still in the forward position. On the surface, it seemed that Bai Lilu had a big advantage. Fang Yan was sent flying by his punch. But Bai Lilu knew that this guy was using Tai Chi's drunken crane riding the wind to reduce his strength. When he punched, it was like hitting a pile of cotton wool. The more strength he exerted, the faster the cotton wadding retreated. But could a stone hurt the cotton wool? That was obviously impossible. Drunken crane riding the wind, what a hateful movement. Bai Lilu thought angrily. He thought of the Fang family's genius martial artist, Mo Qingdi. When he was at his peak, his tendons were cut off by the dragon god and he fell to rock bottom. He lived on wine and sleep every day. But at that time he created this desireless movement technique, drunken crane riding the wind. Everyone knew that he went to the cold land to look for the ice dragon's bloodline. Many people were suspicious and sympathetic of this behavior. Ice dragon? That was a legendary monster. How was it possible to find it? They knew that Mo Qingdi might never come back. A prodigy of a generation had fallen from grace just like that. People couldn't help but sigh in regret. When Mo Xiaodi was at his peak, Bai Lilu's target had always been him. He had thought that one day he would be able to fight against such a master. But now it seemed that he would never have the chance again. Logically speaking, Bai Lilu's punch, which had been accumulating power for a long time, should have missed, because he didn't even touch Fang Yan's body. However, he did not give up. He did not even change his move. His body flew even faster, drenched in the torrential rain and facing the cold wind. His entire palm had turned green. Although the green color was faint, it proved that he had comprehended the star-shattering fist for some time. Fang Yan retreated and rushed forward. When the force of the leap was exhausted, Fang Yan's body began to fall, and so did Bai Lilu's body. As soon as Fang Yan's toes touched the ground, Bai Lilu charged towards Fang Yan's face in a condescending manner. *Pa. The fist incinerated the rainwater and smashed towards Fang Yan's head. Fang Yan's feet were like a pair of ice skates gliding on the water, and Bai Lilu's body was also chasing after him. The whistling of the wind, the pitter-patter of the rainwater, and the heavy breathing of people mingled together. Fang Yan retreated with drunken crane riding the wind in order to reduce the force of Bai Lilu's punch. Now Fang Yan realized that this idea was too idealistic. Bai Lilu's star-shattering fist was ready but not released. Until now, the majestic force was still gathered on his fist and arm. In other words, if Fang Yan did not fight with him, his punch would always be a huge threat to Fang Yan. Fang Yan raised his hands and used the hands supporting the sky move. Bai Lilu threw out a punch and smashed it towards his palm. Bang! The fist and palm collided, making a crisp sound of impact. Kacha! Fang Yan's feet sank, and both of his legs stepped into the bluestone floor at the same time, all the way to his knees. The cracks on the stone floor were still extending outwards, and the sound of stones cracking could be heard in the surroundings. Kacha! Bai Lilu punched, but he did not stop there. With the help of the rebound force, his body leaped into the air and then he landed again. Once again he clenched his fist and punched towards Fang Yan's head. Fang Yan raised his hand again to block. Bang! The fist and palm collided again. Kacha! Fang Yan's legs continued to sink. Bai Lilu's body rebounded into the air again and he once again swung his star-shattering fist from above. Kacha! Fang Yan's body was like a wooden stake being hit by a huge hammer again and again into the depths of the ground. Fang Yan's body sank, and both of his legs were almost completely submerged in the blue stone. He could feel the sharp stone fragments cutting his little brother between his legs. Bai Lilu's body flew into the air again, then he clenched his fists, and with strong winds and heavy rain, he rushed towards Fang Yan. This was the last blow. It was also a fatal blow. Walala! His body fused with the torrential storm like a blurry shadow, a bolt of lightning that was full of lethality. Bang! Bai Lilu punched again. Fang Yan raised his face, letting the bean-sized raindrops hit his cheeks, eyebrows, and eyes. The sky was gray and covered by the curtain of rain. He could not see Bailey Lu's figure and expression at all. However, he could clearly see his fist, his cyan fist, which contained a violent power, was swung forward. "Go to hell?" Bailey Lu roared. "Go to hell." Fang Yen also roared at the same time. This time he did not use his hands to hold up the sky, but when Bailey Lu's fist was about to hit his head, he clenched his right fist and punched out. Bang! Bailey Lu's body was like a rocket that was launched, flying towards the boundless sky at a speed that was 10 times faster than when he came. Fang Yen spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body fell weakly to the ground. The rain was a little lighter and it pattered on this seemingly fresh world. The edges of the roof tiles were washed clean, and the leaves were bright. The dozen or so large vats in the courtyard had already been filled with rainwater. The raindrops that fell into the vats only caused ripples in the water. Bailey Lu only felt sweetness in his throat, and quickly drank a mouthful of strong alcohol. He did not expect that the strong smell of alcohol did not wash away the vomit, but choked it out. Bailey Lu spat out a mouthful of blood which was filled with the smell of alcohol. This was the third time he spat out blood. Fang Yen did not even look at him. He lay on the old rattan chair under the eaves, drinking, and his eyes were fixed on the ripples in the big vats. The courtyard belonged to the old drunkard, and the rattan chair was naturally the old drunkard's rattan chair. Of course, the alcohol they were drinking was also the alcohol brewed by the old drunkard. The old drunkard was moved by the fact that Qinya Bing died in the small courtyard, and broke all the wine vats in his courtyard. On the day when Fang Yixing died tragically and returned to the village, the old drunkard brewed a few vats of shadaozi for himself. Before he finished those vats of shadaozi, he went to the extremely cold place. Therefore, shadaozi became Fang Yan's shadaozi. What exactly happened? Bailey Lu stared at Fang Yen with a face full of unwillingness and said, "I felt that you did not use the heart of Tai Chi. Did it become a dead fetus again? Without the heart of Tai Chi, how could your punch send me flying? What kind of kung fu did you use?" It was not the first time they had fought. Bailey Lu knew Fang Yan's strengths and weaknesses, and Fang Yen also knew Bailey Lu's limits. However, he could not understand the way he fought today or the punch he threw out to counterattack. He used the star-breaking fist, the most powerful and powerful star-breaking fist among the 100 miles godly fists. Even this move could not subdue Fang Yen, and it could not even subdue Fang Yen who had lost the heart of Tai Chi, the Bailey family's godly fist. Was it still a godly fist? Could it be that he had been deceived by his family? "You deserve it." Fang Yen glanced at him and said with a sneer. He did not bother to explain too much to him. The current Bailey Lu was not at the same level as him at all. If he wanted to fight in the future, he would fight his father or his grandfather. As for Bailey Lu himself, he was too inexperienced. Bailey Lu smiled bitterly and said, "You don't really think I'm here to avenge Bai Xiao, do you? Ever since I was a child, I've always disliked that guy. He's a wild child from the outside. Just because he's with Master, he thinks he's some big shot? If you hadn't killed him first, I would have come to him and taught him a lesson on how to be a man. Then why didn't you do it earlier?" Fang Yen said mockingly. "At that time, the star-breaking fist hadn't been mastered, right?" Bailey Lu was a little embarrassed. He drank another mouthful of liquor and said, "Bai Xiao? Is he really dead?" "Dead?" Fang Yen said straightforwardly. "It's good that he's dead." Bailey Lu sighed softly. "Although I used to think he was annoying, I didn't expect him to be so vicious. Such a guy actually appeared in our Swallow Fort. Master." In the end, Bailey Lu did not go too deep on the topic of Master. He looked at Fang Yen and said, "I heard that you came back to force the Emperor to abdicate?" "It's not really to force the Emperor to abdicate. I just want to find an answer," Fang Yen said. "Have you found the answer?" Fang Yen shook his head lightly and said, "I'm still looking. If there's a need, you're willing to help?" "I mean, if there's a need for you," Bailey Lu said. Fang Yen squinted his eyes and smiled. He said, "Of course there's a need." Bailey Lu looked at Fang Yen with a puzzled expression. Fang Yen raised the bowl of liquor in his hand and said, "To the old drunkard." Bailey Lu did not dare to call Mo Qingdi an old drunkard like Fang Yen. Although Mo Qingdi was not there, he still said respectfully, "To Elder Mo." Fang Yen drank all the xiaodao in the bowl in one gulp. Gasping for breath, he said, "Why did you come back this time?" "To marry Yi Ro," Bailey Lu said. Chapter 722. "And then?" Fang Yen asked. His voice blended with the falling raindrops and was masked by the whistling wind, making it almost impossible to hear him clearly. However, Bailey Lu heard it clearly. He could even hear the emotion contained in the word, and then. He was angry and he cared a lot about it, but he pretended to not care. And then? Probably the same as Yi Fengxing? The elders of the family go to the Yi family to propose marriage and give generous betrothal gifts. First, they choose a close date to drink a glass of engagement wine, and then choose an auspicious day to complete the wedding. Enter the bridal chamber, give birth to a child. Isn't that the process of marriage? After everything is done, the two people have to spend the rest of their lives together. I won't do anything to you. Fang Yan took a big gulp of wine and said with a smile, Yi Ro will kill you. Yes. Bailey Lu drank up the shaozi in one breath, wiped the wine stain on the corner of his mouth and said, I'll drink another bowl. I can't drink such strong shaozi outside, and I can't drink the shaozi brewed by Senior Mo outside. Fang Yan ignored him. He ran to the wine jar in the room and took out another big bowl. He sat back on the small stool under the eaves and continued the topic. He looked at Fang Yan and said, Yi Ro will kill me. I know Yi Ro will kill me and they also know Yi Ro will kill me. But why do they still want me to marry Yi Ro? Fang Yan looked at Bailey Lu with bright eyes and a little smile. He asked, Do you like Yi Ro? I asked them why do they still want me to marry Yi Ro? Bailey Lu said angrily. I asked first. Do you like Yi Ro? Fang Yan asked again, and the smile on his face began to widen. Bailey Lu thought for a moment and said, If you have to find a marriage partner, there is nothing wrong with Yi Ro. Well, I admit that I like Yi Ro. You also know that among our group of friends, there aren't many who don't like her. At that time we were a group of men hunting birds in the mountains and fishing in the water, but Yi Ro never played with us. Although we said she was unsociable and didn't like to play with such a girl, we actually hoped that she could be with us. If she inadvertently glanced at us, everyone's heart would pound violently, and their voices would become much louder, just like a group of little roosters that had been injected with hormones. Bai Lilu picked up the wine bowl and took a sip. He felt the strong aroma of the wine, but his eyes were fixed on the water droplets that continuously dripped from the eaves into the pool. The water droplets were like a thick transparent thread, creating small ripples in the small pool. If the water droplets were alive, would they merge with each other or be swallowed by the pool? Were their hearts filled with joy? At that time we were all very envious and jealous of you. We wanted to play with Yi Ro, but we didn't know what reason to get close to her. You're different. Because of the competition every year, you two were born to be enemies. When a group of us stands together, when she looks over, her gaze will most likely be on you, although her gaze might not be kind. You can also go up and provoke her or even insult her and then wait for her to retaliate. In fact, we are all envious of you. Fang Yan nodded, looked at Bai Lilu and said, So you like Yi Ro, so you won't object to this marriage. Even if you object, you won't object so fiercely. Yi Ro has extraordinary skills, and she may become the youngest elite in the Tao of Heaven in Swallow Fort. The Yi family is now like the sun in the sky. If you two get married, the Bailey family will also benefit a lot. Not only the Bailey family, as long as the Yi family spreads the news that Yi Ro is looking for a man, the other families in Swallow Dock will probably rush to marry her. As you said, if you want to find a woman to marry, who doesn't want to marry Yi Ro? After a pause, Fang Yan said, Of course, it won't be easy for you to take advantage of this. The Yi family will never let Yi Ro go. So, did they ask you to be their son-in-law? Bailey Lu grinned and said, We can do this, but you can't. I have an elder brother and a younger brother. I have 4 or 5 cousins and more than a dozen brothers and sisters. Even if I, Bailey Lu, sacrifice for my family or for my beauty, it's not a big deal. For example, Li Xiaotian has an elder brother, Li Xiaolong. Li Xiaolong is so powerful that he can support the Li family. It's not a bad thing for Li Xiaotian to marry into the Yi family and be the peace ambassador between the two families. You don't consider my and Yi Ro's opinions? This business is really good. Fang Yan sighed and said, What business? You put it so bluntly. This is true love. Although Yi Ro doesn't necessarily love us, we love Yi Ro. Then, let's go back to my first question, Fang Yan said with a smile. Aren't you afraid that Yi Ro will kill you? What about you? Bailey Lu looked at Fang Yan with a bowl of wine in his hand and said, Like you said, you won't do anything? Yi Ro is responsible for killing people and I'm responsible for digging holes. I can't bear to let Yi Ro bear such a heavy workload alone. Look, I know it's like this. If I only consider Yi Ro's opinion, I think I can give it a try. He thought, I'm not worse than you, Fang Yan. If I make love to you, Yi Ro may fall in love with me in the future. But if I only consider your opinion, we're brothers. I've helped you. My family forced me to do this. You can't just kill me with a sword. But if I have to consider your and Yi Ro's opinion at the same time, I'm afraid no one dares to accept this marriage, right? The weight of you and Yi Ro together is no less than that of those rich and powerful families. You are a smart man, Fang Yan said as he looked at Bailey Lu with a bowl of wine in his hand. Come on, let me toast you. Because I didn't steal your woman? No. Fang Yan shook his head and said, because you made the right choice. You should know that I will really kill people. I've already killed Bai Xiu. Bailey Lu clinked his bowl with Fang Yan's and said, some people are not easy to kill. Then kill them slowly, Fang Yan said. Anyway, I'm not too busy now. Once upon a time there was a mountain called Monkey Mountain. There was a Taoist temple on the mountain, and there were a group of old monks in the temple. The Taoist temple was located on the mountainside of Monkey Mountain, built against the cliff. Half of the Taoist temple was suspended in the air. From a distance it looked like it was flying in the clouds. Because of the rain, the mountain was blurred and the fog was rolling. The entire Taoist temple was shrouded by the rain and the fog. The Taoist priests in the temple were doing their evening classes in the One Mind temple. There were also a few old Taoist priests in the kitchen, preparing dinner for the Taoist temple. Such a tranquil and comfortable scene, every day passed in this manner. In the past few decades, it was rarely broken by anything. However, today was not an ordinary day. On the cliff of the Taoist temple, a black figure was climbing along the cliff. His posture was calm and his speed was fast. He looked as if he was walking on flat ground. From the bottom to the top, he was like an agile old monkey or a soaring eagle. His body was almost flying toward the outer wall of the Taoist temple. The tips of his feet lightly touched the protruding but precipitous rocks, and then he stepped on a large rock even higher up. When his body reached the top of the void suspension temple, his body paused for a moment. He lowered his voice and looked around. Then his body jumped down like a bat and quietly entered the window of the void suspension temple. There was no one in the room, nor was there any sound. He could not even hear a person's breathing or pulse. This was something he had already inquired about when he came in. He did not stop and continued to climb until he reached the door of a locked room on the top floor. He pressed his palm on the golden lock, and his inner strength burst forth. With a slight ding, the copper lock automatically bounced open. He held the lock in his hand, pushed open the door and entered. The room was dark, but it was not a problem for the black-clothed man. He didn't even need a flashlight to walk around the house freely. For martial artists of their level, night vision was not a very impressive skill. There were rows of bookshelves in front of him, and there were all kinds of books and ancient books on them. The room was filled with a strong scholarly atmosphere, but there was no smell of decay. Instead, there was a faint fragrance. The black-clothed man reached out and quickly searched through the books, looking for a place where the treasure could be hidden. In a very inconspicuous small house in the Taoist temple, a young Taoist was sitting on a chair, drowsily sleeping. Perhaps he was startled by the thunder outside, but he suddenly opened his eyes and wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth. Looking at the surveillance image on the TV screen in front of him and the figure busy in the dark room, the young Taoist became excited and ran towards the one-hearted sect view next door. Lowering his voice, he shouted, "Master, Master? Grand Master, someone's here to steal the Tai Chi painting again. Someone's here to steal the Tai Chi painting again." Chapter 723. The sky was dark and misty and the rain was hazy. The old parasol tree in the courtyard was washed clean by the rain, and the large leaves of the parasol tree showed the green color of their youth, like green jadeite leaves that had just bloomed. There was an open vat under the Chinese parasol tree. The water in the broken vat was already full, and the new water flowed out, flowing into the stream next to the courtyard. Tiny ripples appeared on the surface of the water because of the newly fallen raindrops. Occasionally, large ripples would appear, stirring up the water in the vat, as if there was an invisible monster hiding at the bottom of the vat. However, it didn't show its head, and there was no way to see its true appearance. Splash! A big red fish emerged from the water, opening its mouth and spitting out bubbles, catching the rootless water falling from the sky. It seemed as if something had bitten its tail, and then it suddenly dove into the bottom of the pond. Splash! Water splashed everywhere, and the water swayed even more violently. With the heart of the water as the center, ripples began to spin in the vat. The black shadow was still searching in the room, flipping through the precious ancient books and then throwing them to the side. His movements were extremely fast, but he almost didn't make any sound. The room was still pitch black, and other than the flickering light from his pupils, it was difficult to see any other light. Swoosh! A cool breeze blew toward his back. If it was someone else, they would just think that there was a breeze blowing and their back was slightly cold. However, for the black-robed man, even the slightest movement in the surrounding dozens of feet could not escape his perception. He didn't make any movements, but his body actually disappeared from where he stood. Crack! Countless fine threads of the horsetail whisk slapped the bookshelf, and the bookshelf was cut into countless pieces. That wasn't a natural wind, but a breeze caused by the attack of the horsetail whisk. After missing its attack, the horsetail whisk flicked, and it once again chased after the black-robed man not far away. This time, the direction of the horsetail whisk's attack was that pair of bright eyes. In this dark space, the pair of eyes were a little too bright. Swoosh! There was another faint breeze. The person holding the horsetail whisk leaped up, and his Taoist robe opened, but there was no sound. His appearance, his attack, and his attack, all of them had not made a single sound. He didn't even speak. Even his breathing was so soft that it couldn't be heard. This person was using the Taoist turtle breathing technique. His internal organs were like a turtle in a dormant state, but his body still maintained a powerful offensive ability. The black-clothed man's body disappeared, and the horsetail whisk struck the bookshelf again. The bookshelf could not withstand such gravity, and with a crack, a wooden board fell off. Then the entire bookshelf began to collapse, making a crashing sound. What was different was that this time, the direction in which the man in black disappeared was not to dodge or retreat. Instead, he took the initiative to greet the horsetail whisk. "Evil creature, you're courting death." The middle-aged Taoist priest was infuriated by the black-clothed man's arrogant and conceited behavior. He bellowed and suddenly withdrew his horsetail whisk. Then he swung it towards the black-clothed man's chest. This time, the horsetail whisks were no longer gathered together. Instead, they were scattered and flew towards the man in black like countless flying needles. The fine threads on the horsetail whisk actually broke free from the handle and became a dense mass of deadly hidden weapons that covered all the important acupuncture points on the man's chest and face. "Ignorant child, don't scold me." The black-clothed man scolded, and at the same time he swung his palm out. If there were bystanders, they would definitely be amused by this scene. The black-clothed man came to steal someone's treasure, but after being caught red-handed, he did not want to let others scold him. This was truly tyrannical. What was even funnier was that he called a middle-aged Taoist priest an ignorant child. Whose child would grow up so quickly? This humble Taoist is Fragrant Flower Pavilion's book reader, Qing Xian. Who are you? The Taoist sect had a saying, 3 secrets and 7 mysteries. The 3 secrets were the 3 top experts of the Ji generation, while the 7 mysteries were the heroes of the Xian generation. The 3 secrets and 7 mysteries each had their own strengths, and they were the backbone of the Taoist sect. 3 secrets and 7 mysteries. Let's see if you're fishing for fame. As the black-clothed man spoke, the wind from his large palm swept away the sword-like hard needles. Dong dong dong, the needles pierced into the wall or bookshelf making dull sounds. Qing Xian was shocked. It was very common to use the strength of one's palm to deflect hidden weapons. However, what he swung out were countless hairs of the horsetail whisk, and he used the powerful technique of sweeping away an army of 1,000. Receiving 1 hidden weapon was not considered a skill, and receiving 3 to 5 hidden weapons was understandable. However, how much strength did one need to slap out thousands of hairs at the same time? Who was this person? How did he have such strength? While Qing Xian was shocked, he already held the horsetail whisk and moved towards the black-clothed man. After the black-clothed man swatted away the hairs, his momentum did not decrease. He ignored the sharp handle in Qing Xian's hand, and his palm landed on Qing Xian's chest. Puff! Qing Xian immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew backwards. Clang! His body smashed heavily onto a row of bookshelves, causing them to topple over. This triggered a domino effect, and the bookshelves were also smashed down. Dust flew everywhere in the room, and books fell to the ground, making a hissing sound. Puff! After Qing Xian's body fell to the ground, he spat out another mouthful of blood. He held his chest and asked, "Who are you?" Actually, when he asked this question, the answer was already very clear. Because in the entire Wuxia, there were very few people who could send him flying with 1 palm. The black-clothed man did not answer Qing Xian's question. Instead, he walked towards Qing Xian step by step and asked in a low voice, "Where is the Tai Chi painting?" The black-clothed man's theft had been discovered, and he had caused such a huge commotion. Not only did he not escape immediately, but he also continued to ask about the treasure. "You are also here for the Tai Chi painting. Who are you? Where is the Tai Chi painting?" The black-clothed man had already walked in front of Qing Xin, and he looked down at him. Don't waste time. If I attack again you will already be dead. You should have been killed by me just now. How can Qing Xin? How can I be threatened by evil people? Qing Xin held his chest and laughed coldly. He wanted to stand up, but his internal organs were seriously injured and he could not move. It's just death. I am a monk. Why would I care about this? Then you can go and die, the black-clothed man said expressionlessly. As he spoke, he lifted his foot and was about to step down. Immeasurable heavenly venerate. An old voice came through the window. The voice was loud and clear like thunder. It was so loud that it made one's eardrums buzz. Mr. Black Dragon, you have the time to come to Immeasurable Temple as a guest. Why are you doing such a secretive thing? Why are you fighting with a junior? The black-clothed man glanced at Qing Xian and knew that he could not step down anymore. The leader of the group had stood up, but he still attacked an injured junior. It was really embarrassing. Old Taoist Tai Chong, you are not dead yet? The black-clothed man shouted outside. The moment he spoke, the buzzing in his ears immediately disappeared. Using sound to attack the enemy and using sound to subdue the enemy was the principle of imbuing strength into one's voice. For experts of their level, there was nothing in the world that could not injure or subdue the enemy. Who cares about life and death? The old voice said with a smile. Since Mr. Black Dragon is here, would you like to come out and meet me? Why not? The black-clothed man said aloud. He slapped the tightly locked window of the house with his palm. The window made of rosewood shattered into sawdust and scattered in all directions. The black-clothed man's feet did not move. He did not need any leverage, but he had already flown out of the window. Cha! His feet landed on a bluestone in the courtyard. The bluestone did not move at all. Not even the rainwater beneath his feet was disturbed. Black clothes and a black hat. His entire body was shrouded in darkness. His face could not be seen clearly. Even his figure could not be seen clearly. He stood there motionless, but his body seemed to be wrapped in a layer of gauze, wrapped in a layer of fog. It was illusory and real, and one could never find his true body. In the courtyard, dozens of Taoist priests gathered around. There were old Taoist priests with white beards, and there were also some young and naive Taoist priests. They looked at the man in black who was hiding in the wind and rain with a common enemy. There was no joy nor sorrow, only some anger spreading in their hearts. They did not provoke anyone, but there was always someone who came to their house to steal things and hurt their loved ones. This kind of thing would not feel good to anyone. Were monks not human? However, they did not act rashly. Because the person standing in the black shadow was called the Black Dragon. The most elusive and most unfathomable Black Dragon, one of the 3 divine dragons of Wuxia. Even though they were experienced and knowledgeable, they had to say, the guest who came to visit today was also a legendary figure. In the middle of the crowd of Taoist priests stood an old man in a light-colored Taoist robe. The old man's hair and beard were all black, and there were not many wrinkles on his face. However, his voice was extremely old, like an old monster that had lived for hundreds of years. The old man straightened his back and stood in the middle of the crowd. He looked at the black-clothed divine dragon and said, "Which Tai Chi diagram do you want?" "Treasures of heaven and earth belong to virtuous people," the black dragon said calmly. Even though he was surrounded by so many people, he was not afraid at all. "You have no use for it. I will take it myself." "If you can't take it, doesn't that prove that you are a person without virtue?" Taoist Tai Chong joked. "I haven't taken it yet. How do you know I can't take it?" "I'm afraid you can't take it," Tai Chong said with great certainty. "The world is so big. If I want to leave, who can stop me? If I want to come, who can stop me?" The black-robed man said with a sonorous voice. Chapter 724. The world is so big, if I want to leave, who can stop me? If I want to come, who can stop me? The black-clothed man's voice was powerful, and it sounded like he was full of confidence when he said this. And he stood there with his head held high, fearless of the wind and rain, looking like a majestic idiot. "Such heavy rain, can't you just stand under the eaves for a while?" It had to be said that some martial arts masters did things to show off, and it was still very objectionable. Did standing in the courtyard with an umbrella make people think that you're not a black dragon or a peerless master? Not friendly at all. Black dragon, don't be presumptuous. My immeasurable temple is the orthodox Taoism. How dare you come here and behave atrociously? Are you trying to bully my immeasurable temple? Let me meet him. Immeasurable Temple had always been known as the orthodox Taoism, the foundation of Taoism, and the place where many strong masters came from. Sect Master Tai Chong, Junior Brother Tai Su, and Tai Ying, The three great celestial masters had already entered the heavenly Tao realm, and their martial arts had reached perfection. Because these people were old and had high status, they were dedicated to Taoism and almost did not get involved in worldly affairs. Therefore, the outside world was familiar with the three secrets and seven mysteries. Fang Yan's Taoist master Tianjizi was one of the three secrets, and he was likely to take over the Taoism palm seal. Tao addict Song Zaniang was about the same age as Tianjizi, but he had a very high seniority, and was the last disciple of the previous Taoism sect master. Fu Xing Tai Su was in seclusion and did not come out for several years, and Tai Ying was in the Monkey Mountains cave of no solution. Only Tai Chong could suppress the black dragon. Tai Chong did not say anything, but the descendants of Taoism around him had already started to retaliate. Although they were monks, they had profound cultivation and were proud and arrogant. Today they were bullied by the black dragon and they were already sulking. Now that they heard the black dragon's arrogant words, they naturally wanted to rush up and fight him for 300 rounds. The black dragon sneered and said, "The three secrets and seven mysteries are well known in the outside world, and I think they should have some real skills. But I just met a guy in the library who called himself Qing Xian. I think he should be one of the seven mysteries? In the end he was slapped by me in one round. Although he has some backbone, what's the use? Didn't he still fall to the ground with a slap? Black Dragon, how dare you bully junior apprentice brother Qing Xian? I'm Yu Xian, I'll fight you. Everyone, let's get rid of this old fellow. He's really going too far. Mr. Black Dragon is a guest from afar. Everyone, don't be rude. Taoist Taichung said. The old Taoist priest Taichung's prestige was extremely high. As soon as he opened his mouth to speak, there was not the slightest bit of noise in the courtyard. Taoist Taichung looked at the Black Dragon and said, "If you are a friendly guest, we will naturally welcome you with tea, but if you are a malicious guest who wants to steal our treasures, our immeasurable monastery can only sweep you out. Does Mr. Black Dragon want to leave on your own, or do you want us to drive you away?" It had to be said that the Black Dragon did have the ability to act tough. If an ordinary person were to stand in the rain, they would have long been drenched. How could a drowned rat have any prestige to speak of? The Black Dragon was different. He had been standing in the rain for a long time, and the rain today was indeed very heavy. The rain was boundless, but not a single drop fell on Black Dragon's clothes. Even now, his body remained dry and clean. He did not move at all, but the black robe on his body fluttered, and a rain of arrows flew out in all directions of the courtyard. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless raindrops turned into countless rain arrows, and countless rain arrows flew towards the surrounding Taoist priests. The young Taoist priest retreated nervously. The middle-aged Taoist priest and the old Taoist priest came forward and waved their sleeves. With a flick of their horsetail whisks, they sent the rain arrows flying. "This is to teach you a lesson for not being polite," the Black Dragon said in a gloomy voice. The Black Dragon did not intend to use this move to injure anyone. He only wanted to create some chaos in the crowd. Taichung and a few older Taoist priests stood there expressionlessly. When the rain arrows flew in front of them, they automatically bounced off, as though they had encountered an invisible wall. Even the young Taoist priest standing behind them would not be harmed in any way. After the Black Dragon was done teaching the young one a lesson, his gaze shifted to the old one. He looked at the old Taoist priest Taichung and said, "Taichung, I'm here for the Taiji painting. Give me the Taiji painting, and I will naturally leave." The Taiji painting already has a successor. It will be sent out on a chosen day. "Naturally, I can't give it to you," said the old Taoist priest Taichung indifferently. "Who can obtain this Taiji painting?" asked the Black Dragon in surprise. "Naturally, it's a fated person." "A fated person?" The Black Dragon sneered. "You monks and Taoist priests just like to play tricks. What do you mean by fated people? Those who have a close relationship with you are fated people? It's fine if those vulgar people in the outside world like to play tricks behind the scenes, but even you monks and Taoist priests like to play such tricks. Don't you have any shame? You keep saying that you believe in gods, but if there really is a god, the first thing they will punish would be believers like you who are duplicitous and use their name to cheat." Heavenly Lord of the Immeasurable Taichung chanted and said, "It looks like this old Taoist will have to do something today. To be able to fight with old Taoist Taichung, it's not a wasted trip." As the Black Dragon spoke, his body vanished into thin air. When he appeared again, he had already leaped in front of the old Taoist priest Taichung, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. It was not the Black Dragon's usual movements, but the ultimate technique that the Black Dragon was currently using. This ultimate technique was called appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Apart from a very small number of experts in the world, very few people could track his movements. Just like his nickname Black Dragon, he was hidden in the darkness and all one could see was nothingness. The Black Dragon was currently in a state of nothingness, and his body had turned into a blurry figure. It was just like the name of a very popular television series a few years ago, like Fog, Rain, and Wind. He struck out with his palm, and the palm that he struck out also turned illusory. It was not a shadow but a palm formation formed by countless palm shadows. With just a light palm strike, the Black Dragon locked onto the old Taoist priest Taichung's chi activity. Like an invisible electric net, it trapped his hands, his feet, and every part of his body that could attack. When experts exchanged blows, the first thing they competed on was chi activity. The Black Dragon's chi activity was powerful, and he had struck first. It looked like he had already gained the upper hand. Just as the illusory palm prints were about to strike the old Taoist priest Taichung's chest, the old Taoist priest's body disappeared. No, he did not disappear. He just suddenly disappeared right under people's noses, and then reappeared even more suddenly. It was as if he had used the invisibility technique once, and then instantly lost its effect. Then Black Dragon's charging body was sent flying backwards. Whoosh! His black robe fluttered in the wind. Crack! The Black Dragon's feet stood on the large vat in the courtyard, and he broke a small corner of the vat. Then he looked in Taichung's direction in surprise. Final radiance of the setting sun, rebirth after death. The Black Dragon chuckled. Interesting. In the large vat behind him, two big fish, one black and one white, poked their heads out. The wedding date for Yi Fengxing and Bailey Qingzhu had been roughly set. Because they already had a child in their wombs, many things had to be simplified and done quickly. They had to get married within a month. After all, they could not let the girl's belly grow big, or the news spread before they got married. If that happened, it would not look good on both sides. Fang Yin was originally going to return to Huaqing in the next few days. There were still a lot of things to take care of there. But now, it was very difficult for him to leave. On one hand, he had promised Zhang Jianjun that he would complete a mission for the country. He was duty-bound to help the country. Moreover, Swallow Dock had been doing this all these years. Some obtained merit and some were buried in the earth. But no one had ever retreated. In addition, he wanted to wait until his good brother Yi Fengxing got married before returning. Yi Fengxing was the first to get married among his group of brothers, and he might be the first to become a father. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that some of these fellows had illegitimate children that could already be used as soy sauce. Yi Fengxing spread the news that Zhu Ziden, who was far away in the North Sea, was also said to be coming back. At that time, his group of brothers could have a good reunion. Most importantly, Fang Yin could not bear to go back. During the days he was in Swallow Dock, he accompanied his mother to the mausoleum in the back mountain every morning to sweep his father's grave. He would pour a cup of wine for him, light a stick of incense, and then help his mother tidy up her vegetable garden. In the afternoon he would chat with his grandfather and push his wheelchair and the Vajra eagle around Shahizi. The rest of the time was used to accompany Yi Ro, walking with her, eating with her, watching the sunrise with her, and watching the sunset with her. Because Yi Ro was seriously injured while climbing the heavens path, she still could not practice martial arts. Therefore Fang Yin took her around all day and the Yi family did not say anything. Yi Dawen seemed to have forgotten the unpleasant conversation with his daughter, and turned a deaf ear to her disobedient behavior. It was as if it had never happened. Yi Ro and Yi Ro made a bet because of Fang Yin. Although Yi Ro won the bet, she still promised to take a day to go shopping with Yi Ro, although she did not know what to do. Hearing that Yi Ro and Yi Ro were going shopping in Yanjing City, Fang Yin volunteered to take the responsibility of driving them. Now he followed behind the two women carrying big and small bags in his hands, but what he got was all kinds of dissatisfaction from Yi Ro. "Sister, we are going shopping, why do we need to bring a third wheel? I was going to take you to see a handsome guy." Yi Ro complained, but she pulled Yi Ro into one brand store after another to try on clothes and shoes. "You can also go to see handsome guys now. After seeing them, you will find that a man with inner qualities like me is really rare." Fang Yin said with a smile and kept making eyes at Yi Ro along the way. When he was in Swallow Dock, he always had the feeling that he was being watched. He couldn't do anything intimate with Yi Ro. After coming out, the sky was high and the sea was wide, and it was easy to do something overboard. Fang Yin was even thinking of not going back tonight. He was going to find a hotel and get a room. But what about Yi Ro? This third wheel is really annoying. Chapter 725. Fang Yin and Yezi disliked each other. They both thought the other was a third party. Yezi thought it was not easy for her to ask her sister Yiro out to go shopping. She wanted to introduce her to her life and social circle so that she would not be so introverted in the future. However, why did a man like Fang Yan follow them? Fang Yan's idea was even simpler. If they didn't go back to Swallow Dock at night, how many rooms should they get in the hotel? If they got one room, neither Yezi nor Yiro would agree. If they got 2 rooms, would he sleep with Yiro or Yezi? In this hostile atmosphere, Yi took Yiro's hand and walked into a world-famous luxury flagship store. There were bodyguards at the door and more than a dozen people were waiting in line at the door. Yezi seemed to be used to this kind of thing. She took Yiro and stood in line at the back of the crowd. Fang Yan walked behind them with big and small bags and whispered to Yiro, "Shall we go to another store? There are too many people in this store and we need to wait in line." Idiot. Yezi rolled her eyes and sneered, "This is to make it easier for distinguished guests to shop, so they limit the number of people entering the store at a time. If this kind of brand store is as crowded as a super mall, who would want to go in? This is hunger marketing." Fang Yan said with a smile, "You should have learned this knowledge in college, right? They let a group of people stand in line at the door to tell others to come quickly. If you don't come soon, there will be no more customers. This kind of solicitation is so childish and so many people are fooled. I really don't understand." "You are childish. The things in this store are all limited products. If you don't buy them, they will be bought by others. You won't understand." When Fang Yan was about to refute, he saw a beautiful woman in a red dress walking towards them with a middle-aged man. She said in a sweet voice, "Honey, this is the place. I want that new bag. Can you buy it for me?" The middle-aged man seemed to dote on his little lover. He put his arm around her shoulder and said with a smile, "Okay, if you want it, we will buy it." "Thank you, husband." The woman pounced on him and kissed him hard on the face in front of everyone in the mall. When the woman came to the door, she saw Yi, who was waiting in line at the door. She exclaimed and said, "Hey, isn't this Yi Xinshan? Yi Xinshan, why are you here?" Yi glanced at the woman coldly and said, "What do you have to do with me eating? There's no food here." The woman giggled and hugged the middle-aged man next to her. "Honey, this is my classmate Yi Xinshan. Her favorite brands are Nike and Adidas Shamrock. I've never seen her here before." Yi squinted at her college classmate Liamo and sneered, "What's wrong with me liking Nike and Clover? At least I bought it with my own money. It's refreshing and comfortable to wear. Unlike some people who are like blood-sucking maggots. Who knows what kind of shameful things they would do for a bag." Fang Yan knew the background of the Yi family. With Yi Daoling's status as the economic lifeline of the country at this time, wouldn't it be easy for his baby daughter to buy any brand of bag? Besides, the Yi family also had their own business. Their business was very big. Although they were not as rich as Qini Tian, it was not too difficult to buy this brand store or the Friendship Mall where they were standing now. Because of Yi Daoling's sensitive identity, Yi would not wear clothes that were too ostentatious to bring trouble to her father. Besides, although Yi did not learn martial arts, she also had the inheritance of a martial arts family. Her usual clothes were mainly casual and sportswear like Nike Clover. Occasionally she would extravagantly buy a branded bag and an expensive skirt. Unexpectedly, Ye's low-key had also become the point of attack between the classmates. "Yi Xinshan, what are you talking about? Who is a blood-sucking maggot? You asked your parents for money, aren't you a blood-sucking maggot?" Okay. The middle-aged man patted Li Mo's shoulder and comforted her. "We are all classmates. Don't be angry." When the middle-aged man saw Ye's appearance, he had an instant feeling of amazement. When he saw Yi Ro, who was holding Ye's arm, he felt that this woman should only be in heaven. It was rare to see her on earth. He was a playboy. He had the calmness of a middle-aged man, but he still felt that his heart was beating fiercely. The man took the initiative to reach out to Yi and said amiably, "Yi Xinshan, hello, I am Hu Jianyu. Do you like this brand too? Liamo also likes this brand of bags and clothes. I don't know how many I have bought for her. You and Liamo are classmates. It is rare for us to meet today. Do you want to go shopping together? This has nothing to do with vanity. Girls still need a few beautiful clothes and a branded bag to keep up appearances. Don't you think so?" Hu Jianyu had already revealed his wealth in a few words, and he also revealed the information that he was interested in Yi. As for whether they would accept his kindness or not, it would depend on whether they were tempted by his bait. He had seen too many women like this. On the surface, they were as cold as icebergs or looked like they were not moved by money, but in private, they would take the initiative to leave their phone numbers, waiting for a more fierce attack. He was not willing to shake hands with Hu Jianyu at all. She stared at him coldly and said impatiently, "I don't know you. Yixinchen, you didn't know me before, but you will know me in the future. You see, even if we met before, I didn't know your name, right? I said, I don't know you and I don't want to know you. For Yi, such a man was really not appetizing at all. Not to mention the outstanding young people working around her father, even some pursuers in the school were thousands of times better than him. Although she liked to keep a low profile, her father was in such a prominent position. How could she hide it from some people? At least the sons and daughters of some of the heads in the state ministries and commissions were aware of her identity. She never grouped with others, but those people still intentionally or unintentionally pulled her into such a circle. If you can, don't disturb my sister and me anymore. Okay. Hu Jinyu's face became gloomy and he said sarcastically, little girl, you have quite a character. I hope you can always have such a character. Li Mo originally wanted to show off that she had a rich godfather, but she felt a sense of crisis from Hu Jinyu's attitude towards Yixinchen. Only then did she realize what a stupid thing she had done. She hugged Hu Jinyu's shoulder tighter, smiled sweetly and said, honey, my classmate is not very good at talking. Don't lower yourself to her level. Let's go. Don't let these small people affect our mood. Let's go in and see the bags. Let them continue to line up. Li Mo showed her VIP card, and the bodyguard at the door immediately pulled the rope and let her go. This made some people who were still lining up at the door a little dissatisfied, but they soon calmed down. Such behavior was most acceptable to the rich. They didn't think it was a privilege, but they regretted that their wealth hadn't reached such a level. She's sick. Yezi cursed in a low voice. This woman usually has princess syndrome. She commands people and scolds them all day long. Seeing that I have a good relationship with my classmates, she dislikes me everywhere. Several times she said in front of everyone that I am simple. I just like simple. What's wrong with that? Who wants to dress like a lady like her? Fang Yen tried to hold back his laughter. He didn't expect that Yezi would also be bullied. Fang Yen was very satisfied to see such a good show while waiting in line. Anyway, the person they bullied wasn't Yi Ro. Of course no one dared to bully Yi Ro. Yi Ro held her hand and said, if you kill a fly, will you keep that fly in your heart? Of course not, Yezi said proudly. I don't care about her. Anyway, I'm very angry. After all the people in front of them had gone in, it was Yezi's turn with Yi Ro and Fang Yen. Yezi had paid attention to the new models of this brand, so she went straight to the front counter. Li Mo was choosing bags. Seeing Yezi coming, she said to the salesgirl next to her, give me that red one, that yellow one, and that white one. If you don't have the black one, forget it. Give me all the new models in this series. Okay, please wait a moment. The salesgirl said respectfully. In the face of their VIP card users, this kind of request must be met. Even if ordinary users had such requirements, they had to meet them. Yezi ran to the counter, pointed to a yellow bag and said, give me that one. The salesgirl smiled apologetically and said, miss, please wait a moment. This yellow bag has been chosen by that lady. Then take out the other samples for me to see. Miss, you know that this is a limited edition. How about you look at other styles first? When this lady finishes choosing, I'll bring them to you. Li Mo giggled and said to the salesgirl, you don't have to work for her. This bag is worth more than 100,000 yuan. How can she afford it? I just wanted to come and take a look to clear my name. Hu Jinyu looked at this scene with a smile on his face. He felt very happy in his heart. Chapter 726. Yezi glared at Li Mo angrily, but she didn't want to be entangled with her in such a crowded place. It would be the two of them who would lose face. She snorted, turned around and walked to other places. Yi Ro finally looked up at Li Mo. She didn't say anything to her and followed Yezi to the clothing area. Yezi took Yi Ro's hand and said with a smile, sister, you shouldn't always wear the training clothes. Although I think you look good in the training clothes, you should always wear some clothes that girls like, right? I think you will look like a fairy if you wear a beautiful dress. I think the dresses in this shop are very suitable for you. You can choose whatever you like. I'll pay the bill today. I've been saving up my lucky money and annual dividends. Yi Ro looked at the dazzling clothes on the clothes rack, shook her head and said, I already have clothes to wear. Oh, how long have you been wearing those clothes? I think you should throw them away. Also, those dresses of yours were made by the old tailor at home. It's not that she's bad, but when you think about how your clothes were designed by the same designer as your ancestors' clothes, just thinking about it gives you goosebumps, right? You're not an old woman. Fang Yen quite agreed with Yezi's suggestions. Who didn't want their girlfriend to dress up beautifully? Who didn't like their girlfriend to dress up gorgeously? Always wearing white or black training clothes looked simple and elegant, but it was necessary to change the style, right? And the police uniform, the stewardess uniform, the nurse uniform, and the female prisoner uniform. Life was short and every kind of life should be experienced. Otherwise she would have come to this world in vain. Fang Yen thought it was time for Yi Ro to make some changes. So Fang Yen stood beside him and echoed, "I think Yezi is right. Your clothes are either black or white, and most of them are the same style of training clothes made by the old tailor in your family. How many clothes have you bought? You're still a young girl. How can you share the same designer with an old lady? It's rare for you to come out today. You should buy more clothes for yourself. Didn't Yezi say so? She paid for it." Yezi was furious. She stared at Fang Yen with her big round eyes and said, "Fang Yen, do you have any shame? How could you say something like that? You also know that my sister's clothes are either black or white. You also know that she doesn't have many bright clothes? Since you knew, why didn't you think of buying her clothes? Are you a good boyfriend? No wonder eldest uncle and the others don't agree to the marriage between you and my sister. If it were me, I wouldn't agree either. I'm worried that my sister will have to suffer if she marries into the Fang family. I do want to buy one, but your sister has to give me a chance first," Fang Yen said with a wronged expression. "A few days ago I said that I wanted to bring her to Beijing for a walk, but she refused. If she doesn't come with me, how am I going to choose clothes for her? You can't buy these clothes and swallow dock." Yi sneered and said, "That's because my sister knows you're up to no good. What you said is too much. What kind of person do you think I, Fang Yen, am? I never thought of deliberately taking your sister to a hotel in Yanjing to get a room. Anyway, she's my wife. Why should I be anxious about this kind of thing? You said it. Then tonight my sister will go back with me and stay at my house. I've also stayed at your house. Your house is not big and it's not convenient to stay there. I've already booked a hotel room." "Fang Yen, didn't you say that you never thought about it?" "I didn't think about it," Fang Yen said. "That's what I naturally did. Moreover, I booked a double standard. Each of us has a big bed. Can sleeping in the same room make you pregnant?" "Shameless. You're prejudiced against me. Anyway, I won't let my sister be alone with you. How can you be so shameless? I only booked a room. Why do you have to come and squeeze with us? What if you peep at me when I take a shower and change clothes? Let me tell you, I'm still a virgin. Although I've been laughed at, it proves that I'm not a casual man. I'm not willing to share the same room with a woman I'm not familiar with. Who wants to share a room with you? Who wants to peep at you taking a shower and changing clothes? You want to peep at me taking a shower and changing clothes, right? Look, you've exposed yourself. You just want to sleep in the same room with us." Fang Yen looked at Yi Ro and said seriously, "Let your sister go home by herself at night. You can't leave a beauty with us. You know that I'm not a man who can stay calm even when I'm in love." Yi Ro smiled and watched Yi and Fang Yen quarrel. Although she didn't like to talk, she liked such a lively scene. Because she felt that Fang Yen regarded Yi as his family. She regarded her family as his family and she liked this feeling. "Sister." Yi stamped her feet and said, "You can't sleep with him at night. But I can't sleep with you. Who wants to sleep with you? In your dreams?" Yi wanted to rush up and beat up Fang Yen. She said, "My sister will sleep with me tonight. You can sleep in the hotel. Yi Ro is my girlfriend. Why should she go back with you? She's also my sister." Yi sneered. "If she doesn't go back with me, I'll call my uncle. I'm not a troublemaker, but I can't stand this kind of thing." Fang Yen said to Yi Ro angrily, "She dared to threaten you. If I were you, I wouldn't go back tonight. I'd like to see what they can do to you." Yi Ro smiled, put her arm around Ye's shoulder and said, "I'll go back with you." Fang Yen felt that his head was going to explode. All his hopes were shattered. The police uniforms, the flight attendant uniforms, the nurse uniforms, and the female prisoner uniforms were all gone. He glanced at Fang Yen proudly and said, "Where were we? By the way, we need to choose clothes." He took Yi Ro's hand and walked to the clothes rack. She picked out a blue dress and said, "Sister, I think you must look beautiful in this dress. Why don't you try it? Miss, you really have a good taste. This is our latest style this year." The salesgirl next to her flattered in time. Yi Ro didn't hesitate. She lifted the dress and walked into the changing room. Yi and Fang Yen were waiting at the door. Yi sneered and said, "Don't think I don't know what you men are thinking." "You really don't know," Fang Yen said seriously. "Don't you just want to sleep with my sister?" "No, I don't. I just want to give your sister a chance to sleep with me." Fang Yen shook his head and said, "I'm afraid that your sister will be suffocated." "Fang Yen. We're all adults. We have to face this kind of problem. I knew you were shameless, but now I know you're even more shameless than I thought. I just don't understand why you don't like me. Why should I like you? What do you have that makes me like you? I'm kind-hearted and kind. You don't have any of these, do you? Yo, are you flirting with your boyfriend? The annoying voice sounded again. Liamo walked over with her boyfriend Hu Jinyu. Liamo, he's not my boyfriend. Yi retorted angrily. It was okay to say that she was poor or ugly, but it was too insulting to say that Fang Yan was her boyfriend. Yi couldn't accept it at all. Calm down, calm down. I'm just saying. Liamo said with a smile. I know you have a good relationship with many boys at school. At that time, I also thought they were your boyfriends. But then I thought it was not right. How can someone have so many boyfriends? So this one must not be your boyfriend. Liamo. Yi raised her voice and shouted. This time she was really angry. Are you done? What do you mean I'm done? I came to say hello to you when I met my classmates. What's wrong with that? What's wrong? Did I expose your secret? Did I let you expose the fact that you have a lot of lovers? I didn't say anything wrong. It's just like that. Do you believe that I won't tear your mouth apart? I don't believe it. Liamo said word by word. Yishinchin, those boys flatter you. I won't give you face. I don't believe it. I'm standing here today. What can you do to me? Yi didn't say a word. She slapped Liamo's face. Liamo's slap missed because her tender arm was held by Meng Jinyu, who had been keeping an eye on her. Meng Jinyu scolded Yi while feeling the smoothness in his hand. He said with a straight face, Why are you so uneducated? You can't beat others with words? Or your parents? Is this how they discipline their children? You look beautiful, but what you do is so shameful. You're a typical green tea bitch. Fang Yan. Yi cried. At this time she really needed support. Fang Yan threw the big and small bags in his hand on the ground. He looked at Meng Jinyu and said, Let go of your hand. What are you? Meng Jinyu stared at Fang Yan with disdain and said, Where did this little wild dog come from? But it's true. A bitch with a dog is a genius. Fang Yan grinned and said, It's quite smooth. As he spoke, he punched Meng Jinyu's nose. Chapter 727. Crack. There was a crisp sound and then a stream of blood rushed forward. Because Meng Jinyu was facing Yezi, when his nose spurted blood, Yezi and the salesgirl standing next to her suffered at the same time. Yezi's body was splashed with some bright red blood, and the salesgirl who was about to step forward to stop the fight, was covered with red blood. Ah! The salesgirl was a young and beautiful girl. She had never experienced such a scene. She reached out to touch her face and then her hands were full of blood. She was so scared that her face turned red and she screamed. Meng Jinyu glanced at the salesgirl and thought to himself, He hit my nose, why are you screaming? How can you steal the limelight like this? After condemning the salesgirl for overstepping her authority, Meng Jinyu screamed at the top of his voice like a victim should. Ah! Meng Jinyu also screamed. He felt that his moaning was much more authentic and passionate than the salesgirl. His nose really hurt. His body fell back a few steps quickly, and then he stopped leaning against a shelf. Meng Jinyu reached out to touch his nose, but the pain there made him dare not touch it at all. He couldn't even touch it lightly. Ah, 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 women with big breasts reacted slowly. Liamo finally saw what was happening in front of her. After screaming, ah, 3 times in a row with a high decibel voice, she finally stole the limelight. Liamo carried the bag in her hand and quickly ran to Meng Jinyu's side. She reached out to touch his nose and cried, Honey, how are you? Are you okay? It hurts. Slap. Meng Jinyu slapped her face and scolded, Are you AF asterisk king idiot? Didn't you see my nose? My nose collapsed. Collapsed. Motherf asterisk her, it hurts like hell. I tell you it's not over today. Liamo was slapped in the face, leaving a clear palm print on her face. After standing there for a while, she ignored Yezi's sympathetic eyes and walked towards the man again. She blushed and apologized, Honey, I'm sorry, I was too worried about you. Are you okay? Let's go to the hospital. What hospital? Call someone for me. Meng Jinyu pointed at Fang Yan and then at Yezi. He covered the blood on his face and cursed, I want them to die. I want them to die without a burial place. Bitches and dogs will last forever. This son of AB asterisk T dared to hit me. He broke my nose, I want him to suffer a fate worse than death. Call old Six, quickly call my good brother old Six, ask him to bring his brothers here. The door of the changing room was opened from the inside, and Yi Ro, who had changed into a long blue dress, stood at the door. She saw where Meng Jinyu was pointing and heard her cursing. She couldn't help but raise her brows and say, "Don't scold people. Don't curse? I'm going to King beat someone up?" Meng Jinyu turned around and saw Yi Ro. He was instantly stunned. But at this time he was so angry that he lost control of his emotions. "You're not a good person either. One look and I can tell you're a green tea bitch." Yi Ro didn't understand what green tea bitch meant, but she understood the sentence, "You're not a good person either. How dare you insult my woman? I don't even dare to curse, but you dare to curse my woman." Fang Yan strode forward, wanting to give this reckless guy a piece of advice. Unfortunately, it was too late. Yi Ro's body suddenly jumped up. Yes, in this world-famous luxury store she was wearing a blue dress that she had just changed into, and her body jumped up high like a little fairy. She jumped so high that Fang Yan could hear the exclamations around him. "Look, that girl! Mom's sister jumped so high! Amazing, is this a movie?" Yi Ro's body almost hit the ceiling of the store. She flew over the heads of several customers and then began to fall. She flew above Meng Jinyu's head. When Meng Jinyu looked up he could clearly see Yi Ro's feet, his pupils dilated, and his mouth opened wider. Then he couldn't see anything. Yi Ro slapped Meng Jinyu's face with one foot, and kicked sideways with the other. Bang! Meng Jinyu's body flew up into the air, and then rolled away on the ground. Crack! Yi Ro landed lightly on the ground. She did look like a beautiful fairy. Liamo rushed over like a shrew, reaching out to tear Yi Ro's face and cursed, "You slut, I'll tear your face off." But without the slightest hesitation Yi Ro sent out another kick. So Liamo's body also rolled away. When Fang Yan rushed to Yi Ro's side, Meng Jinyu and Liamo were both flying. "What do you want to say?" Yi Ro stared at Fang Yan and asked. Looking at the blue dress on Yi Ro, Fang Yan said happily, "Ha, I told you. You look good in a blue dress. And? You didn't hurt him, did you?" "He cursed you," Yi Ro said angrily. Meng Jinyu raised his head with difficulty and shouted at the security guards who rushed over, "Call the police! Call the police! I want them dead, I want them to live a life worse than death. Call the police!" When they walked out of the police station it was already a little dark. Ruan Qian sent away the police chief who personally saw him off, and looked at Fang Yan and Yezi. Yi Ro laughed and said, "I often see you fight, but this is the first time I see you in the police station. Is it funny?" Yi Ro looked at Ruan Qian and asked expressionlessly. Ruan Qian was shocked and quickly stopped laughing. He waved his hand and said, it's not funny at all." Because of the relationship between Fang Yan and Yi Ro, the relationship between them and Yi Ro had improved. But Yi Ro was notorious, and if Yi Ro got angry they would still be a little afraid. Seeing Ruan Qian's fierce reaction, Yi Ro slightly raised the corner of her mouth and said, "It's quite funny." "Ah ha ha." Ruan Qian laughed while observing Yi Ro's expression. As long as the situation was slightly wrong, he would immediately change his style. He felt that his life was really too hard. He didn't know how Fang Yan could bear such a violent woman. Fang Yan and Yezi also laughed out loud. They didn't expect Yi Ro to have such an adorable behavior. Ruan Qian also didn't want to live under Yi Ro's oppression. After laughing a few times, he looked at Yezi and said, "Boss asked me to pick you up. He asked you to go home for dinner tonight?" "No need, no need." Fang Yan quickly waved his hand and said, "We're going to eat something outside." "I'm afraid not." Ruan Qian insisted. "Boss said that we must have dinner at home tonight. He still has some things to deal with in the ministry and he will go home after finishing them." Fang Yan hooked his arm around Ruan Qian's neck and said in a low voice, "Brat, are you deliberately trying to ruin my plan?" "I have no choice." Ruan Qian glanced at Yezi and said in a low voice, "Boss personally gave the order. I'm now begging for food under him and I have to listen to him." Then he raised his voice and put on an incorruptible look. "Make an exception? How can I make an exception for this kind of thing? As his secretary, I can only unconditionally execute the order given by our big boss. Besides, why do you need to make an exception for this kind of thing? Our big boss is inviting you home for dinner. This is the glory that many people want. How can you not appreciate it?" "Then you help me think of a way. I don't want to see that old fox Yi Dowling and I don't want my girlfriend to see him. What can I think of? You also saw that the boss's daughter is watching from the side. If I don't convey his meaning he will talk to his father when I go back. Won't I be in trouble?" He raised his voice and said loudly, "Besides, it's rare for our boss to have time to go home for dinner. If the invited guest doesn't go, isn't it not giving our boss face? I advise you to go back with me. If our boss is angry the consequences will be very serious." Yezi glanced at the scene in front of him and muttered, "These two idiots." Then he said loudly to Ruan Qian, "Ruan Qian, go back and tell my dad that I have an appointment with my classmates for dinner tonight, so I won't go back for dinner. My sister will accompany me." "What about Fang Yan?" Ruan Qian asked. "Fang Yan? We haven't seen Fang Yan before," Yezi said. Ruan Qian secretly gave a thumbs up to Fang Yan and said loudly, "Okay miss, I will go back and report to the big boss." Yezi took the blame for herself and Ruan Qian naturally had no opinion. The big boss loved Yezi's daughter the most, so he probably wouldn't be too angry. After Ruan Qian said goodbye to Fang Yan and Yi Rou, she drove away happily. They were very happy that Fang Yan and Yi Rou could be together. Of course, they were also happy that Fang Yan and Qini Tian were together. However, if Fang Yan was together with Yi Rou and Qini Tian, they would feel bad. They were both men with 2 legs. What? Yezi looked at Fang Yan and said, "Are you satisfied now? What do you want to say?" Fang Yan said with a smile. "I don't understand." Still pretending? Yezi's face was full of contempt. "Don't you want to sleep with my sister? Why don't you dare to say this kind of thing?" Chapter 728. Inside the police station, Meng Jinyu's face was swollen. He sat there looking like a volcano that was about to erupt. Li Mo's cheeks were red and swollen. She stood behind him, not daring to say a word. Today's matter in the end was caused by her. If it wasn't because she wanted to show off in front of her classmate Yi Xinchen that she had a rich husband, how could so many things happen later? She knew that Meng Jinyu had a belly full of anger that couldn't be vented, so it was best not to provoke him now. Li Mo really couldn't understand how things developed to this point. Wasn't it just a greeting between classmates? This wasn't the first time something like this happened. The police chief, Wei Xianqing, came back. When he saw Meng Jinyu sitting there, his face became gloomy, and he was about to walk right in front of them. "Old Wei. Brother Wei." Meng Jinyu saw Wei Xianqing and quickly jumped up to stop him. "Brother Wei, it's settled just like that? They hit me and they just let him go. It's settled just like that?" Wei Xianqing raised his eyebrows and looked at Meng Jinyu with an even more embarrassed expression. He said, "Meng Jinyu, how do you think this matter should be settled? They hit me, there should be some punishment, right? Isn't that right? Then how do you think the punishment should be? Lock them up for a few days? There should be an apology, right? Let them go just like that. Look at my face, didn't they hit me for nothing?" Meng Jinyu relied on the fact that he and Wei Xianqing were old acquaintances, so his tone was a bit casual. "Lock them up for a few days? Let them apologize to you?" Wei Xianqing's eyebrows jumped and he said with a sneer, "Meng Jinyu, you don't want to F***king live, don't drag me down with you. I know better than you what kind of person you are. How many cases have you left with me? How many times have I cleaned up your ass? But you can offend anyone, but you offended these big shots. Do you know that you F***king kicked an iron plate today? Not to mention that I can't protect you even myself. As long as they don't let this matter go, one word and I will be kicked out of my current position. Do you know who you have offended? Do you know how much trouble you've caused?" "That's impossible," Li Mo said with a look of surprise. "Yi Xinchen, she's very ordinary. I've never heard of her family having any connections, and it's easy for her to get along with her classmates. Are you retarded? Who said that it's related to me to dress up like a hostess like you? Besides, do you think people of your level have the right to know about the relationship between their families?" "Brother Wei, who's your brother? Meng Jinyu, if you don't want to harm me, then don't call me brother. I can't take it." Chief Wei, what kind of background does his family have? Can we finish him off?" "What kind of background?" Wei Xianqing sneered and said, "You better not know. I'm just afraid that your small back won't be able to take it. They're still outside and haven't left. If I were you, I'd quickly run out and apologize to them, and try my best to smooth this matter over. When they take revenge, I'm afraid you won't even know how you died. Don't you just want to sleep with my sister? Why can't you say it out loud?" Fang Yan's face changed and said, "How can you think of me like that? I want to sleep with your sister, but that's to protect her. You saw it just now. That person is very powerful. Your sister beat him up like this. What if he calls for revenge at night?" Yi sneered and said, "Does my sister still need your protection? You don't know the situation." Fang Yan said with a serious face, "Your sister's body hasn't fully recovered from last time's injury. She jumped so high this time and used her body's true qi. Her body is extremely tired. If I can't stay by her side, her situation will be very dangerous." Fang Yan thought for a moment and added, I also have to transfer true qi to her at any time to prevent her internal breathing from becoming chaotic and damaging her dantian and sea of qi. Do you know what kind of bad effects a damaged dantian and sea of qi will have on us martial artists? Yi shook her head and then nodded. Although she didn't practice martial arts, she was born in an ancient martial arts family and had some basic knowledge of some martial arts. She will die, Fang Yan said in a low voice. Do you think I should sleep with your sister? I know you're lying to me. Yi looked at Yi Ro with uncertainty and said, My sister looks good. Fang Yan shook his head and said, Your sister? She's too headstrong. Her body is so fragile, but she still pretends not to let you worry about her. Do you know how many times she secretly shed tears these days? Yi punched out and scolded angrily, Fang Yan, you idiot. My sister doesn't cry at all. Really? Fang Yan dodged Yi's attack neatly and said with a smile, How can a woman not cry? My sister doesn't, Yi said proudly. I've never seen my sister cry. That's because she doesn't want outsiders to see her inner weakness, Fang Yan retorted. He walked to Yi Ro and looked at her lovingly and said, Let's go eat first? Then I'll buy you some clothes. Just now when Yi Ro was trying on clothes, there was such a conflict. In the end, Yi Ro kicked and ended the farce that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. However, the shop called the police. Fang Yan, Yi Ro were taken to the police station for interrogation. Although Yi Ro called his father Yi Daoling on the way, and his father immediately sent his secretary Ruan Chen to deal with it. However, time was still delayed and Yi Ro couldn't buy a suitable dress. Yi Ro nodded and said, Okay. When the three were about to stop a car and leave, Meng Jinyu and Liu Mo ran out of the police station. Meng Jinyu quickly ran to Fang Yan and shouted, Mr. Fang? Mr. Fang? Fang Yan looked coldly at the culprit who delayed their time and affected their mood and said, What? You want revenge now? If you want revenge, bring people here tonight. Bring more people. Yi Ro looked at Fang Yan as if she was looking at an idiot. She thought that this guy would really do anything to sleep with his cousin. No, Mr. Fang, you misunderstood. Meng Jinyu waved his hand and said, Mr. Fang, I didn't mean that. I didn't think about revenge. After Director Wei's education, I deeply realized my mistake. I'm here to apologize to you. I drank some wine today and did some stupid things. I'm regretting it now. Mr. Fang, please forgive me this time. I won't make such a mistake again in the future. Okay. He reached out to pull Liu Mo to the front and said, Liu Mo and Miss Yi are classmates. This is really a case of water rushing against the temple of the Dragon King, one family fighting another. Little Liu Mo, you should also apologize to Miss Yi. This matter is all on us. Liu Mo looked at Yi Ro strangely as if it was the first day she met her. This girl who dressed in ordinary clothes, did things in an imposing manner, and got along well with her classmates in the class. Yi Xinchen, who was even secretly called a female loser, actually had such a terrifying identity? Even her husband. Even a guy like Meng Jinyu couldn't suppress her? She had such a powerful identity and background, why was she so low-key? Liu Mo. Meng Jinyu was a little impatient and said in a low voice, quickly apologized to Miss Yi. Liu Mo tried to squeeze out a stiff smile, looked at Yi Ro and said, Xinchen, what happened today is my fault. I caused trouble and deliberately wanted to anger you. You are a magnanimous person, don't lower yourself to my level. Yi Ro looked at her coldly and said nothing. She knew that she was not truly repentant. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong was a cancer that grew in her bones. To such a person who was not even a friend, what was there to say? Words like, forgive, should only be said to people who care about you, right? Seeing Liu Mo apologize, Meng Jinyu's expression softened a little. He looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, Mr. Fang, this matter is over? Fang Yan squinted at him and said, Are you afraid of our revenge? No. Why would I? How could a person like Mr. Fang lower himself to the level of a nobody like me? Isn't that right? Meng Jinyu said and laughed. Fang Yan did not laugh. He looked at him seriously and said, Why wouldn't I lower myself to the level of a nobody like you? The big shots bully me because they think I'm weaker than them. You bullied me before because you also think we are weaker than you. Now that you realize that the situation is not right, that you have hurt yourself from kicking yourself, and then you boast that you are a nobody, I hope that we, who are big shots in your heart, will not lower ourselves to your level. Mr. Fang, that's not what I meant, I can compensate. When you bully others, you're arrogant and willful, but you don't give up on bullying me just because I'm a nobody. Instead, you look down on me even more. You're like a vicious dog. When you're young, you can only bully animals that are weaker than you. When you grow up to be a strong dog, you'll bully even more animals that are weaker than you. You won't become kind and restrained just because you're strong. Instead, you'll become even crazier and more savage. Mr. Fong, this is really a misunderstanding. So, why should I give you a chance to become a stronger dog? Fang Yen looked at him with a smile and said, Go back. When you go back, you will find that you have become nothing. Chapter 729. Shaojiangnan. It was the most popular Hangzhou cuisine in Yanjing. Yiro liked to eat light food, so Fang Yen chose this place for dinner. At the dinner table, Yiro looked at Fang Yen with a puzzled face and said, Are you really going to make Meng Jinyu lose everything? A man should keep his word. Fang Yen leaned over to Yiro and studied the menu with her. He said, If you say you want to kill his whole family, you must kill his whole family. If you say you want to make him bankrupt, you must make him bankrupt. Don't order the braised pork. It's too greasy. The bamboo fish here is good, and the fish soup is very delicious. I think you will like it. What are you going to do? Yiro was very curious about this kind of thing. For a big shot like me, it's as easy as killing an ant if I want to take revenge on someone. I can do it by just making a phone call. Fang Yen bragged shamelessly. Are you going to call Lu Chaoga? Yiro asked aloud. Or Qini Tian. Both of them have the ability to do that. Because Fang Yen and Lu Chaoga had a close relationship with Qini Tian, Yiro was particularly displeased about this. She thought Fang Yen was a scumbag who played around with girls. Fang Yen said without raising his head, Why do I have to call them? I can call Lu Shulan Valley. Fang Yen did call Lan Shulan Valley. He believed that Lan Shulan Valley would understand what he meant and solve the problem neatly. He also hesitated to let Lu Shu handle this matter, but Lu Shu's means were dirtier and more vicious. It would hurt the harmony of the world. In the end, he still gave Meng Jinyu a chance to live. Lan Shulan Valley and Lu Shu were his partners and also two of his capable men. Their characters were both extreme. One seemed to be generous, but in fact he was good at moderation. He could easily wander between the Lan family and himself, and he was a rare handsome man. Lu Shu's temperament had changed greatly. He looked gloomy but was cruel in his bones. If he hardened his heart to deal with someone, that person would probably be in a state where they could neither live nor die. But the people you really trust are Lu Chaoga and Qini Tian. Men will naturally believe in women who treat them well. Then shouldn't I trust your sister even more? Fang Yen ordered 2 more snacks and told the waiter to place the order. He looked at Yezi and said, Why don't you ask your sister to kill Meng Jinyu and his little lover? Do you have a bad relationship with people in school? Why are even your classmates targeting you? When I was teaching in school, both teachers and students liked me very much. I was the school idol of Rosefinch Secondary. Keep bragging. Yi sneered and said, Many people didn't like you when you went there just now, right? Also, don't think I didn't notice that you were deliberately changing the topic. How is this possible? Fang Yen immediately retorted, When I just went there, they just didn't know me, so they didn't like me. When they know what kind of person I am, I want to hit you. Yi interrupted Fang Yan's bragging and said, I know everything about you. My father has your information on his desk. Fang Yen looked at Yiro and said with a smile, You see, your family is still investigating me. They want to see if I'm qualified as a son-in-law. Then he looked at Yi and asked, Did they give me a score? How many did they give? It is said that children from rich families will give scores to all their suitors. The one with the highest score will have a chance to win. I don't know whether they gave you a score or not. But it is true that they don't want you to be with my sister. Fang Yen squinted his eyes and smiled, saying, We will definitely be together. Are you so sure? Yiro also turned to look at Fang Yen and stared at his eyes with her big shining eyes without blinking. She meant to ask, How can you be so sure? Because the mountains are no longer as sharp as the sky and earth. That's why I dare to say goodbye to you. They didn't drink in the evening. After dinner, Fang Yen took the 2 girls shopping for clothes. Because of the unpleasant things that happened in the afternoon, the 3 of them were too embarrassed to go to that brand store again. Instead, they went to another shopping mall, to another world-famous brand store. Yiro didn't have many styles of clothes and most of them were plain. Encouraged by Fang Yen and Yiro chose several brightly colored clothes. It had to be said that Yiro's temperament was out of this world. No matter what she wore, she had a different kind of beauty. Fang Yen was happy to see some changes made by his girlfriend. Fang Yen saw a sexy black pajamas in the underwear area. Seeing that Yi was trying on shoes, he quietly pulled Yiro over and pointed at the pajamas, saying, I think this one suits you very well. Yi Ro held the almost weightless black silk pajamas in her hand and asked, "Do you really think this one suits me?" "I think it's quite good," Fang Yen said seriously, "and you didn't bring your pajamas this time. You need to buy a pajamas. Otherwise, what will you wear at night?" Yi Ro nodded and said, "Since you think it suits me, then buy it." Okay, I'll pay for it." Fang Yen nodded excitedly and said, "It looks more suitable for you, doesn't it?" Yi Ro whispered behind him, "How come?" Fang Yen was scared and quickly denied, saying, "This one is too small for me to wear." When they came out of the shopping mall, the whole city was brightly lit and had entered the carnival season at night. Yi Ro held Yi Ro's hand and refused to let go, saying that she would take her to meet her friends. Fang Yen held Yi Ro's hand again and refused to let go, saying that he would go wherever Yi Ro went. So, the three of them took a car together to a club called Elegant Gentlemen. Yi Ro was obviously a regular here. When they arrived at the door, someone greeted them. The receptionist in a red Han costume seemed to be familiar with Yi Ro. She said with a smile, "Miss Yi, Child Chin and others are waiting for you at the Butterfly Loves Flower House." Yi Ro nodded and explained to Yi Ro beside her, "Chin Feng is a guy from our academy. His father works in the Ministry of Finance." Yi Ro nodded as if she remembered Chin Feng's identity and didn't care about these things at all. This elegant gentleman's club was built in the classical Wuxia style. It was mainly made of wood and decorated with halls, terraces, pavilions, rockeries and stones. The waiters inside all wore long robes with wide sleeves, looking like a relic of the Wei and Jin dynasties. The fragrance of tea permeated the air and the music was pleasant. It looked like a very elegant place indeed. Nowadays people in the city were interested in novelty. Some places that were nostalgic or full of primitive and wild flavor were popular and sought after. For example, the beast hunting garden and here. The waitress did not take Fang Yen and others to the box first. Instead, she took them to a very secluded place to change clothes. Fang Yen looked at Yi Ro with a puzzled face. Yi Ro said, "Just listen to her arrangement." Fang Yen was taken to a separate locker room. The beautiful waitress said with a smile, "Sir, do you need to take a bath first?" "No need." Fang Yen stared at her vigilantly and said, "What do you mean?" "I tell you, don't have any bad ideas about me. I came with my girlfriend. The one in black just now is my girlfriend. She's good at fighting." "Sir, you misunderstood. This is a formal place." The waitress explained with a smile, "The reason I asked you to take a bath first is that you can better feel the smell of incense later." "Incense? Sir, aren't you here to eat?" Fang Yen thought about it and said, "Okay. I'll listen to your arrangement. I'll take a bath first." Fang Yen went into the bathroom to take a bath. When he came out, the waitress had prepared a white Han costume for him. Fang Yen felt a little strange in this dress, but he was not unfamiliar with this style. Because Swallow Dock was originally a special place with a strong traditional style. Fang Yen put on his clothes and the waitress helped him tie his belt. She said, "Sir, please come with me." Led by the waitress, they walked toward the small buildings in the backyard. At the door of a small building with a butterfly falling in love with flowers hanging on the door, the waitress knocked on the door, and there was laughter coming from inside. "It must be Yi Ro." Yi Ro said she would bring her sister over. Her sister is also a beautiful woman. "Brothers, please give in." Creak. The wooden door was pushed open from the inside, and a man in a black Han costume stood at the door with a smile on his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but when he saw Fang Yen behind the waitress, the smile on his face instantly froze. He looked at Fang Yen and asked, "Who are you looking for?" Fang Yen looked at him with a smile and said, "Are you a friend of Yi Ro?" "Yes." "Who are you?" The man stared at Fang Yen more vigilantly. "I am Yi Ro's brother-in-law." Fang Yen said with a smile. "Her sister is my wife. They went to change clothes and haven't come back yet, right? Yi Ro asked me to come over first and get to know you." The man hesitated for a moment, moved aside and said, "Since you are Yi Ro's brother-in-law, please come in." "Thank you," Fang Yen said with a smile. He walked barefoot into the wooden house, where more than a dozen people were sitting on the ground. There were men and women among them and they all looked very young. Tea was brewed on the tea table, and 2 sticks of incense were lit in a copper censer on the table. This kind of fragrance was elegant and fragrant, but not strong enough to make people dizzy. It smelled good spices. Outside, some invisible rich people liked to eat fragrance, and good spices were hard to find. There was even a saying that 1 ounce of agarwood was worth 100 ounces of gold. However, the arrival of Fang Yen suddenly broke the lively atmosphere of the scene. Everyone looked at the intruder with a strange expression. Chapter 730. You could never wake up a person who pretended to be asleep, and you could never defeat a thick-skinned person. After Fang Yen sat down, everyone's eyes were fixed on him. No one was familiar with him, and they didn't know what to say when they met him for the first time. They could only look at each other in awkward silence. Fang Yen looked indifferent. He picked up the teacup in front of him and carefully tasted the high-quality De Hong Pao tea. Anyway, he was just an accompanying guest, an inconspicuous but important green leaf beside Yi Wen and Yi Wen-ro. This was his position in his heart. Chen Feng was Ye's pursuer and the organizer of this party. Although he didn't like Fang Yen, he also knew that since this person was brought here by Yi, he was naturally valued by Yi. If he had a close relationship with Yi, thinking that he might have a close relationship with Yi, Chen Feng didn't have a good impression of Fang Yen. Brother-in-law? Brother-in-law? So what? How did that sentence come about? Wasn't a sister-in-law the intimate little cotton-padded jacket of a brother-in-law? However, he still had to put on a good show. Chen Feng looked at Fang Yen and asked with a smile, "Sir, what's your name?" "Fang," Fang Yen said with a smile. "Oh, Mr. Fang, are you really Ye's brother-in-law?" "Yes." Fang Yen nodded with absolute certainty. Ye's sister was Yi Wen-ro. If he wasn't her brother-in-law, who else could be her brother-in-law? "I've long heard from Yi that she has a beautiful sister who is as beautiful as a fairy, but we haven't had the chance to meet her. This time she said she would bring her sister to Yanjing for a trip, so we wanted to do our duty as hosts." Chen Feng had a square face and looked a little serious when he wasn't smiling. But when he smiled he looked kind and honest. From his face he didn't look like a treacherous person. He pointed to the two young men who were also wearing long robes sitting opposite him and said with a smile, "Zhang Quan and Li Weiguo wanted to perform well tonight, and maybe they would have a chance to win the beauty's heart, but they didn't expect that the beauty already has a boyfriend. Speaking of which, it really makes me sigh." Li Weiguo had a delicate face and looked gentle. He was drinking tea with a teacup in his hand. After hearing Chen Feng's words, he pretended to be angry and retorted, "Chen Feng, your words are biased. In this room, only Zhang Quan and I want to win the beauty's heart? Before Yi and the others came, who was the one who wanted to perform well?" Chen Feng laughed and said, "Didn't you say you two were the loudest?" Chen Feng and said, "Are you?" Li Weiguo looked at Fang Yen and asked, "What do you do, Mr. Fang?" Fang Yen thought for a bit, then said, "I used to be a teacher." "Huh?" Li Weiguo grinned and said, "So it's teacher." "It's a good job, the future of our country is in your hands," Li Weiguo said. This job is good, but the contempt in his eyes was not concealed. No matter how much they wanted their children to hide their strengths and bide their time, they would not let them become teachers. Those without talent could not do it, and those with talent would not want to be trapped in a 3-foot platform. Therefore, from Fang Yan's profession, it could be concluded that this guy had no background or money. Since Fang Yan's identity had been classified, the people at the scene talked freely and unscrupulously. "Mr. Fang, is this your first time here?" Zhang Quan asked with a smile. It was said that Fatso had a lot of tricks. Although Fatso smiled innocently, his hidden shrewdness could still be seen through his flickering eyes. "This is my first time." Fang Yen nodded frankly and said to the people present with a proud look, "If it wasn't for your invitation, I wouldn't have known there was such a good place in Yanjing. Most of the buildings here are in the style of the Wei and Jin dynasties. Although there are some changes, it doesn't affect the overall atmosphere here. This place is different from other clubs. We don't drink or sing and we don't ask for hostesses. Everyone bathes in incense and gathers. There are also poetry gatherings where some eminent monks and famous scholars are invited to give lectures. Of course, this is only possible if you are lucky enough to meet them," Chen Feng explained with a smile. "There are exceptions," Zhang Quan said with a teacup in his hand. "If you are a member of the Elegant Club, you can receive an invitation in advance. Mr. Fang, do you want to apply for a membership card here? The price is not expensive. It only costs more than 300,000 yuan a year. Chen Feng and Mr. Zhong of the Elegant Club are old friends. If he helps you to greet them, you can get a discount." Fang Yen waved his hand and said, "Thank you for your kindness. I rarely use incense. It's fine to feel it occasionally. You don't want to apply for a membership card? Of course you don't have money. Feeling it occasionally is fine? That's shamelessly asking for incense. For parties like theirs, sometimes they bought the incense from the club and sometimes they brought it for themselves. A freeloader like Fang Yen was looked down upon by others. Of course, because of the relationship between Fang Yen and Yi, they naturally wouldn't attack Fang Yen for being poor. How could they talk about money? If they talked about money, they would appear to have no quality and style, but they could attack Fang Yen for being uncultured. They wanted to use their profound knowledge to conquer Fang Yan. They wanted him to clearly understand the gap between them and himself. They wanted him to be ashamed of himself and to not show his face. So, Li Weiguo suppressed his excitement and asked a very stupid question. Mr. Fang, did you use incense before? Fang Yan held the teacup and carefully looked at Li Weiguo's expression. It seemed that he was thinking about something very important. After a long time, he nodded and said, I used incense. That's great. Li Weiguo applauded and laughed, saying, I didn't expect to meet a kindred spirit today. Li Weiguo pointed to the copper incense burner in the middle of the table that was emitting pale white smoke and asked, Mr. Fang, do you know what incense is burning in this burner? Yi and Yi Ro also changed into wide robes with big sleeves. Yi Ro chose plain white. White and black were her favorite colors. Yi chose cyan like the weeds in spring, looking full of youth and very bright and lovely. Yi looked at Yi Ro in the white robe and couldn't help but praise her, saying, Sister, you look so beautiful in the Han costume, just like a fairy. Yi Ro smiled silently. She was very fond of her sister. She touched her sister's hair and said, How can there be a fairy in the world? You are. Yezi said proudly, I heard from my father that if you succeed this time, you will become a fairy. Sister, although I don't know what the way of heaven is, it must be something great to make my father and my uncles so excited. You have always been the most powerful. Not only in our Yi family but also in Swallow Dock. You are very powerful in the whole Wuxia. Yi Ro thought for a moment and said, Fang Yan is also very powerful. Sister, Yi Ro complained. Do you like to speak up for him so much? How is he powerful? How can he be compared with you? He is really powerful. Yi Ro pulled Yi Ro to sit down on the rattan chair and said seriously, Do you know he has the heart of Tai Chi? Yes. Yi Ro nodded. So what? Didn't you still beat him black and blue like a pig? Yes, this was Yi Ro's understanding of Fang Yan. Not only Yi Ro but many others also thought that Fang Yan's kung fu was just SOSO, the heart of Tai Chi? The name sounded powerful but he was still beaten black and blue by Yi Ro. In this way, it proved that the heart of Tai Chi was actually a fake product, which was deliberately mystifying by the Fangs. However, they had never seriously thought that Fang Yan's opponent was Yi Ro, who was known as the once-in-a-century genius of Swallow Dock. Because Yi Ro was so powerful, it seemed that Fang Yan was not powerful at all. He is better than me, Yi Ro said softly. She was not used to talking to people loudly. Even the people closest to her talked to her in a flat and expressionless manner. However, this was her unique style. A kind of domineering and cold personality. Tai Chi has a heart. This is the consensus of all the people in the inner Jianghu who practice Tai Chi hard. Think about it, how many people learn Tai Chi? There must be hundreds of thousands of people in the world, right? But think about it again, how many people among hundreds of thousands of people understand the heart of Tai Chi? And at Fang Yan's age, how many of them are there? Yi Ro widened her eyes and said, So powerful? But, I know. You want to say that he was defeated by me every time we competed and he even ran away. It was really shameful. Yi Ro rarely interrupted others and said, Tai Chi is about letting nature take its course and follow the heart. But what was Fang Yan's heart? At that time he couldn't find his heart at all, but I know that his heart was not as simple as defeating me. What was the point of defeating me? What was the point of defeating a woman? Just like Bai Xiu was always unwilling to fight with me, Fang Yan also thought that it was not necessary to fight with a woman until both of them were defeated. Humph! Yi Ro sneered and said, Those annoying guys. So what if she was a woman? They couldn't defeat a woman, damn the sandpig doctrine. So, at that time Fang Yan had been holding back. Yi Ro lowered her voice and even her eyes became extremely soft. I hit him hard again and again to force him to use his full strength, but he still didn't do his best. Yi Ro was surprised and said in a low voice, So, Fang Yan had already started to hit on you at that time? He did it early. Chapter 731. This person is too scheming. Yi Ro drew such a conclusion from Yi Ro's story and said angrily, I couldn't see it before. I thought he always opposed you because he didn't like you. Now I know that everything he did was to attract your attention. Sister, why is this guy so scheming? How old was he at that time? He only knew how to pick up girls? Yi Ro didn't expect that Yi would have a different understanding of Fang Yan after she explained the situation in the past to Fang Yan. Anyway, in her eyes, Fang Yan was not a good person. But you were already very beautiful at that time. There are many boys in Swallow Fort who like you. It's just that you don't care about them. That Fang Yan is always glaring at you, picking on you whenever there's a problem, looking for trouble whenever there's a problem. Instead, he keeps loitering in front of you. This method of picking up girls is so old-fashioned. I didn't expect it to be so effective. At that time, Fang Yan didn't like me, Yiro said aloud. Why didn't he like you? Why didn't he like you? Yiro said angrily. After a pause, she gritted her teeth and said, I know the person he liked at that time was Phoenix. What's so good about that woman in Yushao? She's not as beautiful as you. Yiro shook her head and said, everyone has their own eyes when it comes to liking. How can there be a standard? There is. Yiro said proudly. She pointed to her little face and said, everyone likes me. That's because you're cute, Yiro said. I'm cold and always like to hit people. Sister, do you know? You're the cutest when you're cold and hitting people. When you and Fang Yan competed in martial arts, I would be there as long as there was a chance. That's because I think you're the coolest when you beat Fang Yan until he begs for mercy. You're so cool. Even if he knows the heart of Tai Chi, it doesn't prove that Fang Yan is better than you. Yiro insisted on her point of view and said, Sister almost succeeded in climbing the heavenly law. Why didn't he? It proves that he's still not as good as you. He had the heart of Tai Chi at a young age and was already the best disciple of Tai Chi because of his father's death. He observed mourning for 3 years. After he went out, he comprehended the light of Taiji. Only with benevolence and compassion could one have the heart of Taiji. He had the spirit of justice and selflessness and was the best disciple of Tai Chi. He had the light of righteousness and was the best disciple of Tai Chi. This was a principle that all martial artists understood. His heart wasn't bad, but his mouth was too poisonous, which always made people forget about his true nature. Think about it, when did he really hurt anyone? Even when the Fang clan was bullied to that extent a few years ago, after he obtained the Taiji heart, when did he ever find trouble with others? Father died tragically. If this happened to anyone else, apart from Bai Xiu, Li Xiaotian, Zhu Ziden, and the others from Swallow Dock are all outstanding people, but if they were to suffer such a blow, would they still be able to keep their minds clear? Ro Yi, Tai, can they do better than Fang Yan? Yi Wen Ro sighed softly, her voice filled with deep pity as she said, he has an enemy in Hua City and an enemy of the country in Yanjing. He has to face a colossus like the Jiang family, and because of Senior Mo he even has to face the pressure of the Divine Dragon. Every step he takes is like walking on thin ice, it's really not easy. If it was another man, would he have the time to go shopping with you? He still has the mood to joke around with you? Up until now he still maintains his innocence and smiles. Such a man, I'm afraid it's hard to find in this world, right? Yezi was in a daze for a long time and said, Fang Yan did not have it easy, especially during the years when his father was killed. He seemed to have changed into another person. I don't know what's going on, but when I saw his cheeky smile, he suddenly stopped smiling. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. Seeing that Yi Ro was lost in her own thoughts, Yi pulled Yi Ro's sleeve and said, Sister, are you really going to marry him? Yi Ro looked at Yi Ro in confusion, not understanding why she asked such a question. I always feel that you can look around, Yi Ro said with a serious face. Sister, you don't go out often, so you have less contact with men. I think there are many men out there, very good men. Men who are not as good as Fang Yan. You should look around and choose more. A woman's marriage is a lifetime event. Uncle and the others don't want you two to get married, and there are many obstacles in between. Even if it's difficult to get together in the future, some people will always be hurt. Wouldn't it be better if you can have the best of both worlds? Yi Ro looked at Yi Ro and asked, have you ever really liked someone? Yi Ro nodded and said with a blush, have you? Didn't I tell you? When I was in junior high there was a boy in my class who was very handsome when he played basketball. Have you ever loved someone? Well, Yi Ro's expression was a little confused. What kind of feeling could be called love? If you are willing to live and die with someone for the rest of your life, you won't feel bored. Yi Ro said. Except for him no one else can. That's the kind of feeling. Yi Ro shook her head and said, not yet. I'm not even sure what kind of man I will find. Except for him no one else can. Yi Ro's voice was still calm, but her tone was unquestionable. If he asks me to marry him, I will say yes without hesitation. So I will marry him. Yi Ro was silent for a moment, fiddled with her hair and said, forget it, that's between you two. Why do you explain so much to me? Yi Ro looked at Yi Ro and said, I understand your intention. You arranged such a gathering to let me see more men, to see some other outstanding men in Yanjing. But my eyes can no longer contain other men. I won't even look at them. Yi Ro smiled bitterly and said, I know I can't hide it from you. My dad asked me to do this and take you to see more people. I don't want to. I understand. Yi Ro nodded. She wanted to believe Yi Ro's explanation, and she also knew that there were other elders' thoughts in it. However, since she fell in love with that man, nothing was more important than this. Oh no, Yi Ro suddenly exclaimed. What's wrong? Let's go and have a look. Yi Ro jumped up and pulled Yi Ro out. What happened? I hinted to Qin Feng and others to embarrass Fang Yan. I don't know how badly they have bullied Fang Yan now, Yi Ro said anxiously. Yi Ro didn't worry at all after hearing Yi Ro's words. She was still pulled by her sleeves and walked quickly, but she looked calm and said, "It'll be fine." What about them? Yi Ro smiled slightly. She didn't believe that anyone could bully Fang Yan. They walked quickly and came to the Butterfly Loves Flowers box under the guidance of the waiter. As soon as they arrived at the door of the box, they heard Fang Yan's voice coming through the wooden doors and windows. The heart of wood is placed in the water. Those that can sink in the water are called agarwood, and those that can sink with the water are also known as water sinks. Those that are half sunk are called plank incense. Those that are not sunk are called yellow ripe incense. It's recorded in the Compendium of Materia Medica, not by me. The most precious agarwood is agarwood, which is also divided into different grades. Japanese subdivided into 5 grades such as white agarwood, red agarwood, yellow agarwood, purple agarwood, black agarwood, and many other names. Agarwood is often not available for money nowadays. It is said that the grade of agarwood is based on the comfort of the taste, and white agarwood is the highest. Of course, I haven't tasted this kind of white agarwood before. The most used one is purple agarwood. After agarwood is red earth agarwood. Those that grew in yellow-colored yellow soil were called yellow soil agarwood. Those that grew in red-colored red soil were called red soil agarwood, and those that grew in brownish-black soil were called black soil agarwood. What was burning in the copper stove should be red soil agarwood. If I'm not wrong, it should be the relatively rare red earth agarwood. Which place has the best red earth agarwood? Someone asked aloud. It could be heard that the voice of the person who asked the question was very humble. It seemed that he had accepted Fang Yan's identity as a fake expert. The red earth agarwood of Phu Sen in Vietnam is the highest grade, just like the wine of the Bordeaux region. It has a symbolic meaning. When we drink outside, when we hear that it is the red wine of the Bordeaux region, we all feel that it is a grade higher than other wines. The grade of red earth agarwood is determined by age. For example, the quality of the same material buried in the soil for 100 years and 200 years is different. The higher the value, the better. The longer it is buried in the soil, the original softwood parts will be eroded by soil organic matter and the remaining immortal essence will be lost. Thus, a fundamental change will occur. The aroma will become stronger without the smell of wood. If it is buried for a long time, the surface will crack. This is what people in the industry call carbonization. This kind of agarwood is the best and the most expensive. It is difficult for us small people to see it, but it is not a rare item for everyone here. After Fang Yan finished speaking, it was the peak of the people's questions. Mr. Fang, what do you think of the soft silk agarwood? Mr. Fang, do you have any precious collections? Can you let us broaden our horizons? Don't ask. Let Mr. Fang drink some water to moisten his throat. What happened? It sounds different from what I imagined. Didn't we agree to let these people embarrass Fang Yan? How come they all become his fans in a short time? You're more knowledgeable than me. There was a smile at the corner of Yi Wen's mouth. Ye's expression was stiff. She looked at Yi Ro, opened the wooden door and walked in. Chapter 732. One was dressed in snow-white clothes, elegant and charming, like a fairy from heaven. The other was young and charming, like a beautiful girl next door. Yi Ro and Yezi, the pair of sisters, walked in side by side and immediately attracted the attention of all the men in the room. A fair lady was a gentleman's match. Even if they couldn't wait for it, they could look at them for free. Even the eyes of the only 2 women in the room were bright and gloomy, as if they were ashamed of their inferiority. Staying in the same room with such women, how could any man notice their existence? Yezi looked at the people in the room with a sweet smile and said, "What are you talking about with Fang Yan? It seems that you are having a good chat." Fang Yan? Hearing this name, many people in the room were moved. They only regarded this young man as Yezi's brother-in-law and only knew that his surname was Fang. For the sake of Yezi, they also called him Mr. Fang. Later they learned that he was knowledgeable and knew all kinds of spices that they were obsessed with. Even Li Weigua, who was the most proficient in them, had to admit that he was inferior to him. However, in their eyes, this man was just a teacher or a knowledgeable teacher who knew some techniques of Agarwood and talked calmly and admiringly. No matter how excellent he was, no matter how extraordinary he was still a teacher. No matter how excellent a teacher was, what was he in the eyes of these people? If they valued you, it was because they were courteous and virtuous. If they looked down on you, it was because they were arrogant and disdainful. However, if the person sitting in front of them was Fang Yan, the weight would not be the same. Is he the famous Fang Yan who defeated Jiang Junling in Huaqing? Is he the Fang Yan who forced the Jiang family to expel Jiang Junling? Is he the Fang Yan who had an affair with Qin Yitian? Qin Yitian is the most beautiful woman in Yanjing. Zhang Quan, what are you talking about? It's true that Qin Yitian is beautiful, but there are two beauties standing in front of us. They are no less beautiful than Qin Yitian. Everyone asked questions one after another, and everyone's eyes shifted to Fang Yan. Previously, their gazes were also on Fang Yan, but the way they looked at him then was completely different from the way they looked at him now. Watch. Just like the singers on the stage or the clowns on the stage of an acrobatic troupe, they would occasionally go to watch and they would even be willing to drink with one or two of the big stars, but when it came to deep friendship, how was that possible? Paying attention to him was different. You had to pay attention to him, pay attention to his every word and action, and even think about how to respond to him. If Fang Yan was the Fang Yan they were talking about, then all the young masters and ladies in this room should give Fang Yan the appropriate treatment. He would be treated in a manner befitting of his reputation, abilities, and resources. This was class. Yiro looked indignant. Not only did they change his script without permission, but they all behaved like this after hearing his name. Are you still young masters who take a few lackeys to flirt with innocent women? Yiro looked calm and indifferent, but her eyes were fixed on Fang Yan's face from beginning to end. Even if her eyes occasionally moved to other places, her mind was still on Fang Yan. As she said, since she fell in love with Fang Yan, she would not look at other men. She liked this state. She liked people to pay attention and respect to Fang Yan. It was not that she was vain. She just thought, if others treated Fang Yan like this, it would prove that her husband was excellent and powerful. Well, okay, she was still a little vain. She liked to see Fang Yan being looked at like that. She did not want the man she liked to be despised and looked down upon, which was even more unacceptable than being despised and looked down upon herself. In fact, with her current state of mind, she did not care about being despised and looked down upon. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled. Looking at Chen Feng and the others in front of him, he cupped his hands and said, I'm Fang Yan, Fang as in square, Yan as in two fires. I do have some conflicts with Jiang Junling, and Qin Yitian can be considered as my old acquaintance. However, he is not as powerful as you said. He is just a poor man who was bullied by a woman and moved to Huaqing to be a teacher. Hearing Fang Yan's self-mockery, everyone present burst into laughter. Yiro blushed. Obviously, she did not expect that Fang Yan would make fun of her. However, she felt sweet in her heart. Because Fang Yan had closely connected her with him, she was the heroine of this incident. She really liked this feeling. Was this what it meant to be in love? Since there was no point of reference, she couldn't tell. However, she liked this feeling. She was very satisfied. Although everyone was smiling on the surface, waves were surging in their hearts. Indeed, this Fang Yan was the Fang Yan they were talking about. This Fang Yan had dealt with the 4 young masters of Huaqing, who were rather famous in Beijing. It was said that the Lanshan Valley, which was based in Beijing, had become his loyal supporter. The Huaqing's lover, Lu Shu, had become a mad dog beside him. The Jiang family was the most miserable. Not only had their family been destroyed, even Jiang Zhulu, the most famous of the 4 geniuses, had become a prisoner. Even if these people's status and background far surpassed the current Fang Yan, who would be willing to be enemies with such a guy with such a glorious battle record? Chen Feng was a free and easy person. Moreover, he wanted to show off in front of Yiro. Hence, he took the initiative to apologize to Fang Yan. Although they didn't make things difficult for Fang Yan earlier, there was indeed a layer of enmity between them. For smart people like them, this kind of thing could be seen with a single glance. It was better for them to resolve it. Fang Yan waved his hand and said, I'm just a small character with a small nose and small eyes. What's there to not recognize? We didn't know each other before, but now we know each other, right? We're all friends from now on. Because they heard that Fang Yan was the first to snatch Yiro's sister, Li Weigua and Zhang Quan were the most hostile toward Fang Yan. Earlier they were also the first to make things difficult for Fang Yan. Now that Chen Feng, who was the hidden leader among them, had apologized to Fang Yan, the 2 of them immediately followed suit. Li Weigua personally carried the teapot to Fang Yan and said with a smile, Brother Fang, I'll use tea in place of wine to toast you. Thank you for your guidance earlier. If there's a chance in the future, I'll treat you again to thank you. Fang Yin held the teacup with both hands and said with a smile, Thank you so much, Brother Li. Zhang Quan also looked at Fang Yin with a smile and said, Brother Fang is a person who really understands incense. I still have a few boxes of good incense here. Although they're not as rare as agarwood, they're also the best red earth incense. You can take one box back to have a taste later. If you like it, I'll supply it all year round. The crowd shouted and asked why Fang Yin could supply it all year round, but they could only have one box each. Wasn't this too unfair? These young masters and ladies were all slick people. If they wanted to make friends with someone, they would naturally be happy and harmonious. Bathing and changing clothes, drinking tea and eating delicious food, chatting and then having a good sleep. Wouldn't that be great? Except for a few who had to go back, most people slept in this elegant club at night. Most of them were members of this elegant club. The club provided extremely comfortable and luxurious rooms for these members to rest in. Qin Feng walked to Yi and asked if they would stay at night. Yi hesitated, thinking that he would be nagged by his father if he went back. It was better to stay in this elegant club for one night than to get a room in a hotel. So he nodded and said, We'll stay as well. Qin Feng asked someone to prepare 2 room cards and said, These are the rooms prepared for you. Fang Yin took the room cards and gave one to Yi. He said, You use one room. Your sister and I will share one room? Yi Ro's expression was slightly bitter, but she didn't say anything. Yi glared at Fang Yin fiercely, but she didn't expose the fact that Fang Yin and Yi Ro were just a couple in front of everyone. Other people wouldn't find anything wrong because when Fang Yin entered the room, he introduced himself as, I'm her brother-in-law. Everyone scattered to sleep. Fang Yin took Yi Ro's hand back to the room in front of everyone and said, Let's go back to sleep. Yi Ro felt sweet in her heart when her little hand was held by Fang Yin. However, she also thought in her mind, men love their faces. Now I let him do whatever he wants. When everyone else is asleep, I will go to sleep with Yi. As the night grew darker, the backyard became quieter. After taking a bath, Yi sat alone in the pavilion in the yard and was lost in thought. Qin Feng, dressed in a white bathrobe, sat opposite the stone table with a bottle of red wine and 2 wine glasses in his hand. Have a drink? Qin Feng asked. Let's have a drink, Yi answered. The red wine had already been opened. Qin Feng poured red wine into the 2 glasses and then handed one to Yi. He asked, Is there something on your mind? Not really. Yi's eyes were empty. Obviously she was still immersed in her own thoughts. Clang. Qin Feng touched Yi's glass with the one in his hand, took a mouthful of red wine and said, Isn't it too unethical of you to do this? You asked us to make trouble for him, but you didn't tell us his identity. Yi glanced at Qin Feng and said, If I told you his identity in advance, would you still be willing to make trouble for him? Qin Feng thought about it seriously and said, Although we are not afraid of him, why should we provoke such an enemy with such a great threat? You also know that even a freak like the general's decree fell in his hands. Such a person can't be a close friend, so it's better to stay away from him. That's it. Yi shrugged indifferently. Qin Feng looked at Yi and said, What are you confused about? I'm thinking about a problem. What problem? What is love? Qin Feng's eyes widened, and then his eyes became burning. He said, That is, no matter when we meet, we will be attracted to her again. Yi thought about it seriously, but in her mind, the tall and straight figure of Fang Yin standing up for her when Meng Jinyu pounced on her, the girl shook her head and threw the picture out of her mind. She said, This is really a troublesome thing. I still don't know what love is. Qin Feng's face instantly became incomparably complicated. I'm sitting right in front of you. Can't you raise your eyes and take a good look at me? Chapter 733. After entering the room, Fang Yin was at a loss of what to do. What should I do next? Push Yi Ro down? Isn't that too barbaric and reckless? I should take a shower first, right? But I have just taken a shower and the fragrance on my body is quite nice. Besides, even if I push her down, what should I do next? Is it really so easy to let Yi Ro get my body and my virginity? Every man's first time is extremely precious, and it is the most important and sweet memory in their life. Isn't it too easy to lose it so easily? At the very least, even if the 2 of them really complete the great harmony of life. It is said that men's first time is very fast, and 9 out of 10 men will do it in a second. If I do it in a second, will Yi Ro laugh at me? Even if she doesn't show it on her face, she must despise me in her heart, right? Every time we spar, I always step on you. Now that I finally give you a chance to climb on top of me, you fall down so easily. Are you still a man? She must be thinking this in her heart. Thinking of this possibility, Fang Yen had a feeling that he would rather die than live. As a virgin, he really felt a lot of pressure. Fang Yen found the remote control and turned on the TV. The TV screen was showing Animal World and 2 leopards were mating. Fang Yen grinned, but he soon restrained himself. She wouldn't think that I was hinting at something, would she? Fang Yen didn't want to appear too wretched and he didn't want to change the channel. So he asked Yi-Ro, "What do you want to watch?" Yi-Ro walked to the living room and sat down saying, "Anything." This question was too clever and perfunctory. It was useless to ask. Fang Yen put down the remote control, looked at Yi-Ro and said, "Let's talk for a while." Yi-Ro looked at Fang Yen strangely, thinking, "Aren't we talking all the time?" However, she still nodded obediently. Yi-Ro had a cold personality and didn't like to talk. Moreover, if someone touched her bottom line, she wouldn't hesitate to punish them severely. But when she was alone with Fang Yen, her docility and obedience could melt anyone's heart. Fang Yen sat down beside Yi-Ro. He thought for a moment and moved closer to her. After some thought, he moved closer. When their bodies were close to each other, he could feel the softness of Yi-Ro's body and smell the fragrance of Yi-Ro's breath. He couldn't help holding Yi-Ro in his arms and covering her mouth with his. He thought it was more direct to communicate in this way. Besides, this wasn't the first time they had come into contact with each other. Yi-Ro's lips were soft and her tongue was sweet. Although she wouldn't respond too intensely when kissing, she wouldn't bite off Fang Yan's tongue like the first time. Besides, her body was much softer now, unlike the previous few times when her entire body was stretched taut like a tree stump. Now her body was still a little stiff. Experienced people could see that Yi-Ro was a little nervous, but Fang Yen wouldn't care about it at this time. All of this was because he was also very nervous. Men were not easily satisfied. He kissed Yi-Ro's lips and then began to grope her breasts. Fang Yen always wanted to do this before, but he didn't dare to. He was afraid of being beaten. Today was the best time and the best time. He was in another city, not in the Swallow Fort where people were constantly monitored and suppressed. After shopping for a day, he went to the police station, bought a lot of clothes, took a bath, drank good tea and smelled good fragrance. The room was elegantly decorated, very stylish and romantic. On this starless and moonless night, Fang Yen felt it was time for him to become a diligent man and start to kill monsters and level up. This was something he had never done before. He was also going to climb to a new height, a new world that he had coveted for a long time. It was said that men were born with an abnormal attachment to women's breasts because the first mouthful of food they ate came from them. A woman's breasts were children's tableware, but most of the time they were men's toys. They could play with them for a lifetime without getting tired. Yi-Ro was thin, but her breasts were round and plump. Unlike those giant breasts that were on the verge of collapse as if 2 rabbits were stuffed into their clothes, they were firm and well-proportioned. They were neither too big nor too small, which complemented her appearance and temperament. Fang Yen wanted to touch Yi-Ro's breasts. Of course, it was a little rude to say so. However, this was the thought that men would have when they saw the goddess they loved. For many people, they would be happy to accept even if she was a little ugly and had a little bigger breasts. Fang Yen straightened his back and slightly distanced himself from Yi-Ro's body. Yi-Ro opened her closed eyes slightly as if she had realized something. She closed her eyes again and took the initiative to stick her body to Fang Yan's chest. Yi-Ro began to resist, although her way of resistance was unusually gentle. Resistance is a normal reaction. Fang Yen encouraged himself in his heart. It's not that she doesn't like you, but she hasn't gotten used to being touched by you. She's just shy. When Fang Yen thought of this, he distanced himself from Yi-Ro's body again. However, Yi-Ro quickly stuck her chest to Fang Yan's chest again. Their bodies were so tightly pressed that nothing could get through. Fang Yen secretly felt sorry for his right hand. He thought, "Brother Right, I'm sorry that you've been wronged. Your treatment is far worse than my chest." Therefore, Fang Yen suddenly pressed Yi-Ro under the sofa with all his strength. Fang Yan's body was on top of Yi-Ro's. He greedily kissed her and reached out to catch the softness. As soon as he touched it, Yi-Ro opened her eyes and stared at Fang Yen without blinking. Fang Yen touched it, but Yi-Ro didn't hit him. Fang Yen touched it again, but Yi-Ro still didn't hit him. Fang Yen grabbed the softness and touched it several times, but Yi-Ro still didn't hit him. Fang Yen thought for a while and discussed with Yi-Ro in a low voice, "Can you close your eyes? Or I'll cover your eyes with something. I'm very nervous when you look at me like this. I feel like you'll punch me away at any time. I want to take a shower first." Yi Rou bit her thin lips and said in an almost inaudible voice, "Oh my God." Fang Yen blushed after hearing that. His heart raced, his body went limp and his arms became weak. He almost fell heavily on Yi Rou. "Did you guys hear what she said? She said she wanted to take a shower first. She actually said she wanted to take a shower first." Fang Yen was so excited that the muscles on his face twitched. What will happen after taking a shower? Although Fang Yen is still a virgin, he's not an idiot. Isn't that what we all know? Of course, Fang Yen had the demeanor of a general. He couldn't be too obvious or women would think he was too lascivious. He also couldn't be too flustered or women would think he was too frivolous. He had to be elegant and calm. He had to show that he often got a room with women and that he was familiar with this kind of thing. Oh no, he couldn't show the last one. Fang Yen climbed up from Yi Rou's body and pulled Yi Rou up as well. He looked at her pretty face tenderly and said in a low and magnetic voice, "Wait a minute, I'll go get the water for you." Fang Yen thought it was best to take a couple's bath first. Because he suddenly remembered that he had never taken a couple's bath with someone, but he often took a bath with a man. When he was young, he would jump into the Stone River with Zhu Ziden and Li Xiaotian from time to time. Especially in the summer, he would soak in the Stone River for a while almost every day. He also took a bath with Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan. Thinking of their figures, Fang Yen didn't want to think about it anymore. He was very satisfied with this point. He was not only a flirting man, but also king straight man. In this era where gay sex was the norm and men hooked up with men, it was really rare that the person he liked was a woman. Fang Yen stood up and walked toward the bathroom. He turned on the boiling hot water and carefully rinsed the bathtub twice. Then he drained the dirty water and began to put in warm water for a bath. He tested the temperature and poured the bottle of essential oil into the bathtub. "It's done," Fang Yen shouted. He walked toward the living room and said as he walked, "You can take a bath now." There was no one in the living room. Yi Rou was nowhere to be found. Obviously, Yi Rou had sneaked away when Fang Yen was busy turning on the water in the bathtub. There was a note on the table with a few beautiful words written on it. "I said go back to your room to take a bath." Fang Yen stood there in a daze. He had the urge to slap himself. He hadn't completely recovered from the blow until he took off his clothes and soaked his whole body in the bathtub. He felt that he was too inexperienced. How could he run to turn on the water at such a critical moment? "Why should I turn on the water to take a bath?" he asked himself over and over again in his heart. "I'm not dirty and I won't dislike Yi Rou for being dirty. No wonder there are long scenes of women taking a bath after sex on TV and movies. It's because men won't let them take a bath before sex." Chapter 734. When they met in the restaurant the next morning, everyone looked at Fang Yen with strange eyes. Only Fang Yen knew that he was no different from yesterday. The ugly virginity hat was still on his head. Yi Rou didn't like shopping, but she liked to go shopping with Fang Yen. In other words, as long as she was with Fang Yen, she was willing to do anything. Even if they didn't do anything, it was a sweet joy to just look at each other quietly. Yi Rou knew how to drive, so she drove Fang Yan's refurbished and painted antique Hongqi car back to Swallow Dock. Yezi had to stay in Yanjing to study, and there was still more than a month before the final exam. Before that, she couldn't skip classes and run to Swallow Dock. The Yi family attached great importance to studies and the education of their children. Yi Daoling wouldn't allow his baby daughter to be mediocre in both literature and martial arts and could only rely on him to make a living. Of course, such things were not uncommon among the powerful. Fang Yen didn't go back with Yi Rou because he had other things to do in Yanjing. When he was having breakfast with Yi Rou and Yezi, he received a call from Zhang Jianjun. He asked about Fang Yan's whereabouts and said that a car would pick him up later. Fang Yen said the name of the elegant place, and Zhang Jianjun said with a smile that he knew where it was. He asked Fang Yen to wait in the club and a car would pick him up later. It wasn't until the afternoon that Fang Yan's phone rang again. It was a woman named Qing Niao who called. She said that she was ordered to pick up Fang Yen to the headquarters. "Where is the headquarters?" Fang Yen asked aloud. "You'll know when you get there." Qing Niao was very tight-lipped, and her tone was very impatient. She said, "The car is waiting for you at the entrance of the club." She said the car, not she. It seemed that there was a hidden hostility to Fang Yen in her words. This made Fang Yen a little puzzled. When did he offend this bird? Puzzled, Fang Yen still walked toward the entrance of the club. This was an appointment with Zhang Jianjun, and behind Zhang Jianjun stood the old man. Therefore, he could only comfort his slightly restless heart with the words, "The king of hell is easy to see, but the little devil is difficult to deal with." After all, even the old man had praised him, so why should he care about other people's attitudes? Swallow Dock had things they had to do. This was a tradition that had lasted for thousands of years. Why would he need to look at anyone's face? Fang Yin arrived at the parking lot in front of the clubhouse. A woman in black tights was leaning against the car and smoking. She had thick eyebrows, short hair, an oval face, and exquisite facial features. She could be considered a unique beauty. Seeing Fang Yin coming over, he didn't ask Fang Yan's name. He pinched the cigarette butt in his hand and said, "Let's go." After that, he opened the door of the passenger seat and jumped in. Fang Yin noticed a detail. She used 2 fingers to put out the burning cigarette butt and brought it directly to the car. She didn't have the habit of throwing cigarette butts around. This made Fang Yin have a slight favorable impression of her. There was a driver in the front and someone in the passenger seat, so Fang Yin opened the back door of the Buick and sat in. The driver started the car and rushed toward the Yanjing city. Because Fang Yin wanted to know where their headquarters was, he paid attention to the scenery outside along the way. He wanted to see if it was a place he was familiar with or a road he had walked before. The woman called Qing Miao also looked at Fang Yin through the rearview mirror from time to time, but she didn't stop Fang Yan's behavior. Obviously, she also knew that this kind of thing didn't need to be kept secret from Fang Yin. The car drove to the center of Yanjing City and finally drove to the entrance of a small island. Facing the heavily guarded gate, Qing Miao opened the window and handed over a black card. The person inside the gate swiped the black card on the computer, and a huge loan-to case immediately appeared on the computer screen. The guards immediately raised their hands to salute and respectfully returned the black card. They didn't even check the car to see if there were any suspicious people or suspicious items. Fang Yin sat quietly and didn't say a word, guessing the organization and identity of Qing Miao. The river bank and the central island were connected by a bridge. The car quickly rushed across the bridge, but it didn't enter the main gate. Instead, it went to a deeper area on the right. They passed through 2 more checkpoints, and each time the green bird simply handed over the black card, and they were allowed to pass. The car stopped in a small parking lot, and Qing Miao opened the door and got out. She didn't talk to Fang Yin, but just looked at Fang Yin with indifferent eyes outside the window. Fang Yin knew that he needed to get out of the car as well. Sure enough, as soon as he got out of the car, Qing Miao led the way in front without saying a word. The driver didn't follow them but drove the car away quickly. After passing through another stone archway, what entered his eyes was a series of small courtyards that were arranged in a picturesque disorder but not closely packed together. Fang Yin understood what this place was. The Mystery Department. He had long heard of the Mystery Department, and knew that it was a special organization within the Red Wall that specialized in the security of the country's leader. It was also an extremely hidden organization. These people were secretly responsible for the security of the country's leader, and also dealt with some powerful and destructive enemies and very difficult matters for the country. There were many talented people in the Mystery Department, and there were many experts. He had once imagined what the Mystery Department would look like, but he didn't expect the headquarters of this organization to be openly exposed under the sun, in the bushes. Of course, it was in the bushes under the sunlight of the Red Wall. Fang Yin carefully looked at the small buildings, thinking about what kind of people lived in these small buildings. Of course, what he was most concerned about was where Dragon God was. Logically speaking, the people of the outside world didn't know what kind of experts were in the Mystery Department. However, because the Fang family paid extreme attention to Dragon God, and Dragon God's reputation was too great. Therefore, not only the Fang family but other people in the Jianghu also knew that Dragon God had entered the Red Wall. It was just like how they knew that Azure Dragon had fallen in battle, and that Black Dragon had appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Qing Miao, who was walking in front, clearly felt the change in Fang Yan's mood. She turned around and looked at Fang Yan and shouted, "Don't look around." Fang Yan grinned and said, "I want to see what can you do." Despicable person. Qing Miao's eyes were filled with killing intent as she said coldly, "What's your relationship with Bai Xiu?" Fang Yan asked with a smile. "You." Surprise flashed in Qing Miao's eyes. She didn't know where she had exposed a flaw that would actually make this guy connect her with Bai Xiu. "Let me guess." Fang Yan's mouth had a hint of ridicule as he said, "Bai Xiu has entered the Red Wall before, and may even have carried out some difficult missions for the Mystery Department as an assessment. Perhaps you are Bai Xiu's partner in a mission. You, a woman, have not seen much of the world and have not come into contact with truly outstanding men. Naturally, you will be deceived and deceived by Bai Xiu, a pretty boy who is good at scheming. You like him and even love him. But this is the Mystery Department. You can only temporarily suppress your feelings in the bottom of your heart, thinking that one day you and Baishio will have the chance to be together. As long as you can have more opportunities to be together, as long as he can obtain the position that he once could. Unexpectedly, Baishio was killed by my sword. So you hate me. Is that so? Qingyao took a deep breath. Her eyes were cold and her face was gloomy. She said in a low voice, "You think too much. I know Baishio, but he is only my comrade." "Is that really so?" Fang Yen sneered and said, "I can feel the frequency of your heartbeat. I can even hear the change of your qi when you take a deep breath. Baishio is your Achilles heel, right?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "You should already know what Baishio has done. Even the people above won't tolerate him." Fang Yen looked at Qingyao with a smile and suddenly raised his voice and said, "If you don't want your feelings to be known by everyone, then you better respect me a little. You're slandering me, you don't have any evidence." "What evidence do I need?" Fang Yen said disdainfully. "Gong Sunqi and I are friends of life and death. If I tell him that you like Baishio, do you think he will tell everyone?" Qingyao's expression changed dramatically. She did not expect Fang Yen to be so despicable and shameless, and be able to use any means. She did not expect that Fang Yen actually knew Gong Sunqi, and that the two of them were friends of life and death. No. Qingyao's thoughts instantly became clear. Because Fang Yen suddenly mentioned Baishio and guessed her love for Baishio, she was caught off guard. However, she was a member of the mystery department after all, and had the experience of carrying out many missions. Whether it was IQ or experience, she was not bad, and her mental reaction was also much stronger than ordinary people. It was just a moment of confusion, and then she returned to her normal level. She looked at Fang Yen with gritted teeth, and was almost deceived by this disgusting hooligan. "Fang Yen, don't try to trick me. Don't underestimate the Azure Dragon. You were injured by Mr. Dragon God, and your Fang family and the Dragon God bloodline have a death feud. Gong Sunqi is Mr. Dragon God's beloved disciple. How could he be your life and death brother?" Fang Yen shrugged indifferently and said, "You're right, Gong Sunqi apologized to me and wanted my forgiveness, but I rejected him. It doesn't matter if he's not qualified to be my life and death brother. Your feelings for Baishio are a fact, and you might even have some secret collusion. As long as I tell this to everyone I see, who do you think they will believe? I don't believe that when you two met back then, you were not noticed by someone with ulterior motives." Qin Yao's expression changed many times, and after a long time she suppressed the hostility in her heart and asked, "What do you want? Answer me a question." "What question?" "Which courtyard does the Dragon God live in?" Qin Yao was shocked and said, "You want to challenge Mr. Dragon God?" "No." Fang Yen looked at Qin Yao as if she was an idiot and said, "We'll take a detour to avoid him." Chapter 735. The green bird knew that Fang Yen had a grudge with the divine dragon lineage. The divine dragon had been living among the people for decades, and the moment he entered the capital, he challenged Azure Dragon, who was at the pinnacle of martial arts, to not underestimate his enemy. He won in one battle, and during the battle he severed Azure Dragon's tendons, causing his cultivation to be ruined. He became a cripple who treated alcohol as his life. With Azure Dragon's demise, the Fang family fell into dire straits. From the green bird's point of view, Fang Yen had 100,000 reasons to hate the divine dragon, but he also had 1,000,000 reasons to challenge the divine dragon. The divine dragon entering the Red Wall to become a consecrator of the Mystic Division was not a secret in the outside world. For Fang Yen to take the initiative to ask about the divine dragon yard's whereabouts, he naturally wanted to take the opportunity to challenge the divine dragon to avenge Azure Dragon and his family's humiliation. If not, how would he have the chance to meet the divine dragon himself? In Fang Yan's eyes, the green bird's question was really idiotic and ridiculous. "Please, do you think my intelligence is on the same level as yours?" Ignoring the responsibility and consequences of challenging a high-ranking consecrator within the Red Wall, just the risk of fighting the divine dragon alone was not something he could bear. It would be fine if he won, but if he lost, it was a question of whether he could survive. Even the old drunkard who had entered the heavenly Tao realm was not the divine dragon's match. His tendons had been severed by that perverted old thing. From this, it could be seen that the divine dragon was ruthless. He showed no mercy when it came to killing in battle. As the old saying went, "It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge." Fang Yen was a gentleman. Fang Yen was in no hurry. 50 years later, when he mastered his divine powers and entered the pinnacle of the heavenly Tao realm, he would definitely trample that old bastard into mush. If 50 years wasn't enough, then 60 years. If 60 years wasn't enough, then 70 years. Fang Yen was younger than the divine dragon, and there would be a day when the divine dragon would be reduced to mush. He firmly believed in this. Upon hearing Fang Yan's answer, the green bird looked at Fang Yen with even more contempt. She said, "I thought you were going to avenge your family in a fit of rage, but I never expected you to be a coward who only knows how to avoid and take detours." Fang Yen didn't care at all. He looked at the green bird indifferently and asked, "Can you defeat the divine dragon?" Mr. Dragon God has long entered the heavenly axiom realm, and his skills are profound. How could I possibly be Mr. Dragon God's opponent? Qing Yao was extremely respectful when she mentioned the Dragon God's name. On one hand, it was because of the Dragon God's ability. He held a high position in the Xian division and was indeed highly respected. In addition, because of the hatred between the Dragon God and Fang Yan's enemies were naturally her friends. Then why don't you challenge the Dragon God? The day you defeat the Dragon God will be the day you become famous. Green Bird sneered and said, "You still want to fight when you can't win? Do you think I'm an idiot?" Fang Yan nodded his head seriously, but repeated Qing Yao's words and said, "You still want to fight when you can't win? Do you think I'm an idiot?" You. Qing Yao was furious and said, "I have no enmity with Mr. Dragon God, so I'm not in a hurry to challenge him. You have a deep hatred with the Dragon God. The elders in your family were hurt by the Dragon God. Now that you've met him, not only do you not seek revenge, but you're also afraid to move forward. For a man like you to exist in the Fang family, you deserve to fall." Fang Yan looked at Qing Yao with a smile and said, "You really want to see me challenge the Dragon God? That's your personal matter. What does it have to do with me? It's just that as a martial artist, I can't stand cowards." Fang Yan picked up a stone from the ground and threw it at Qing Yao. He said, "Do we have enmity now? Why don't you take revenge on me? Do you think I don't dare to kill you?" Qing Yao clenched her fists and her eyes were filled with murderous intent. Dust rose up from where her feet were standing and scattered in all directions. That was because she began to accumulate strength in her feet. She could rise from the ground and give Fang Yan a killing blow at any time. "Of course you don't dare," Fang Yan said with a smile. "If you dare to make a move, I'll shout that you're going to kill me. The fact that you're Bai Xiu's girlfriend will be known to the world." "Who's Bai Xiu's girlfriend?" Qing Yao's eyes were about to spit fire. She forcefully suppressed the hostility in her heart and shouted, "Fang Yan, don't slander me." "You're angry?" A proud smile appeared on Fang Yan's face. He said, "Do you feel that the world is dangerous now? Do you know that you can't speak up now? Do you know what it feels like to be wronged?" Fang Yan's expression froze and he shouted angrily, "Bai Xiu killed my father and repeatedly set up traps to kill me. In the end, I used all my strength to kill him. How did I offend you? Is it because when he wants to kill me, I just lie there and let him kill me? Is that the only way to satisfy you? On what basis? It's all your words. Who would believe it? Who can testify?" Fang Yan was so angry that he laughed at this woman who had fallen in love. He said, "What does it have to do with me whether you believe it or not? Anyway, I've already killed Bai Xiu. Also, why should I prove anything to you? Who do you think you are?" "Fang Yan, if you can't kill me, then don't cause trouble for yourself." Fang Yan stared at the woman disdainfully and said, "Do you know that whether it's a quarrel or a fight, you're no match for me?" "Who's no match for whom?" A cold and arrogant voice suddenly came from the dense forest beside them. Fang Yan and Qing Yao looked toward the dense forest at the same time. A young man dressed in black with a delicate face and a strong oppressive aura strode over. The man's eyes were piercingly cold, and there was not a trace of emotion on his face. He gave people a feeling that he was arrogant and difficult to tolerate. "Gong Sun Chi," Qing Yao whispered. Because of the divine dragon's illustrious reputation, almost no one in the Xian division dared to provoke him. The divine dragon's beloved disciple, the little divine dragon Gong Sun Chi, was arrogant and rude. He never put his colleagues in his eyes. It was obvious that she feared and disliked Gong Sun Chi. Fang Yan glanced at Qing Yao, then looked at Gong Sun Chi who was walking over with a majestic gait and said with a smile, "Brother Gong Sun, I just told Qing Yao that we are life and death brothers." Gong Sun Chi's gaze fell on Fang Yan's head and said, "Who's life and death brothers with you? Are you worthy?" Qing Yao also said so. "He said that you're not worthy of being my life and death brother. But I told him that I only look at fate when I make friends, not status or ability. You're just a pile of shit. As long as I find you pleasing to the eye, you're my life and death brother." Fang Yan. Gong Sun Chi's gaze was like a knife. I didn't bring any money that day, so I couldn't kill you with my palm. Are you forcing me to make a move? You speak as if you can beat me. Fang Yen said with a smile. Besides. Fang Yen pointed at Qing Miao and said, she was ordered to pick me up, so she naturally has to protect me. If you dare to make a move on me, Qing Miao will kill you with one palm, Fang Yen. Qing Miao clenched her teeth and glared at Fang Yen. She had the urge to bite him to death. She really regretted it. Why did she provoke such a scoundrel? If she had known earlier, her attitude towards him would have been slightly better. Even if she had enmity, she couldn't let him find out. Why did she have to cause so much trouble for herself? What? Did I say something wrong? Fang Yen looked at Qing Miao and asked. You picked me up. If someone made a move on me and you didn't protect me, then it would be your dereliction of duty? I'm afraid it won't be easy to explain, right? Qing Miao knew that Fang Yen was difficult to deal with. She was far inferior to him in terms of eloquence, so she didn't want to waste any more time on the road. The young chief was still waiting for him at the Xian department. Thus, she looked at Gong Sunqi and said, Gong Sunqi, the young chief wants to see Fang Yen. I'll bring him over now. Gong Sunqi stared at Fang Yen for a long time and finally said, I'll let you live for now. After saying this, his body suddenly became shorter. Only then did the clothes on his body start to flutter gently with the breeze, and the long hair on his head also danced in the wind. When he walked out of the dense forest, he came with the force of thunder. He indeed had the idea of killing Fang Yen with his palm. At that time he was like a sword that had been unsheathed. In the cool breeze his long hair didn't fly and his clothes didn't flutter. His entire body was surrounded by the energy around his body, forming a transparent vacuum. It was hard to see with the naked eye, but Fang Yen and Qing Miao could feel its existence. Now that it had given up on the decision to make a move, its body and clothes returned to their natural state. Look, you're also threatening me. Fang Yen sighed helplessly. Do you know that anyone who threatens me doesn't have a good ending? When I first came to Huaqing, the school's director threatened me. Then his son was sent to a labor camp. Then Jiang Zhulu, one of the 4 prodigies of Huaqing, threatened me, and now he's in prison. Jiang Junling also threatened me. He was chased out of the Jiang family and became a wandering ghost. Now you're also threatening me. To be honest, I'm looking forward to your ending. Tell me, how do you want to die? Fang Yen. Gong Sunqi's clothes straightened up again, and the hair on his head froze again. His palm glowed with a red light, and he could unleash a powerful palm knife at any time. He hated Fang Yen to the core. He hated Fang Yan's stinky mouth to the core. I'm here, Fang Yen replied softly. Are you blind? Gong Sunqi. Qing Miao hurriedly stood between the two of them. Fang Yen, that idiot, didn't care, but he had to consider the consequences of the battle between the two of them. The young chief wants to see Fang Yen. I'm going to take him there immediately. Gong Sunqi's eyes shone brightly, and he didn't hide his ability realm. He thought for a long time and could only reduce the force again. He stared coldly at Fang Yen and said, Today I'll let you win with your words, but someday I'll cut off your tongue to go with wine. Look, you're threatening me again. If I were you, I'd quickly shout, Auspicious Emperor. Gong Sunqi snorted coldly, turned around, and walked toward a small courtyard on the side. Fang Yen looked at his tall and straight back and sighed softly in his heart. When would he be able to draw his sword and cut off the dragon god's head, the little dragon god Gong Sunqi's head, Jiang Junling's head, and Song Zanyang's head and little Dick? Others could draw their swords in anger, but he could only be a lowly person in anger. It was just a battle of words. Even if he won, what was the point? What would he gain? Fang Yen thought about it seriously. At least he was happy in his heart. Well, as long as he was happy, it was worth it. Fang Yen thought in his heart. Qing Miao glanced at Fang Yen and once again led the way in front. When Fang Yen was about to leave behind her, a clear voice rang out. Old friend, I'm here to visit. How can I not see you? Chapter 736. Old friend, I'm here to visit. How can I not see you? His voice was clear and bright, and it didn't have any oppressive might or ruthless aura. It was calm and upright, and it was like a benevolent senior that saw a nephew he liked and issued a sincere invitation. The voice was clear, but he could not see who the speaker was or where he was. It traveled through space and time, but it still felt like it was right in front of him. Green Bird was shocked and stopped in her tracks. She whispered, It's Senior Dragon God. Without needing Green Bird's reminder, Fang Yen had already confirmed the identity of the speaker. He had never seen the Dragon God before, let alone heard a word or two from him. However, he was very sure that this person was the dragon god. It was like an epiphany of telepathy, or a long-awaited godhood. Dragon god. The immortal dragon god had a tough life. Fang Yan's mouth was full of bitterness. Had he alarmed this old monster? Did he want to cut off his path of progress? Could it be that he dared to cut him down in front of everyone? Hearing the dragon god's voice, Green Bird looked at Fang Yan with a mocking gaze. She smiled and said, "Mr. Dragon God invited you to see him. Do you dare to see him?" "He didn't invite me," Fang Yan said. "I don't have any elders who are his old friends." After Fang Yan finished speaking, he strode forward. Oh, he started running. "Coward." Green Bird sneered. The dragon god suddenly spoke. Fang Yan and Green Bird were not the only ones who were shocked. Gong Sun Chi, who was walking towards the courtyard, also heard the voice. He turned to look at Fang Yan's distant back and shouted, "In this world, there are only a few people who can be called an old friend by Master. Green Dragon, don't underestimate enemy, is one of them. Fang Yan, the old friend junior that Master mentioned is you. I must not decline an elder's invitation. Green Dragon, don't underestimate enemy, and your master have no relationship. I only have a deep-rooted hatred and the belief to defeat him." Fang Yan retorted as he ran. "You little brat." The dragon god's voice came again. No matter how far Fang Yan walked, that voice would always follow him like a shadow, as if it was right beside his ear. "Azure Dragon, Mo underestimate is a heroic and outstanding genius. Even though you were defeated by me, you are still worthy of admiration. You don't even have the courage to see me, so how can you talk about revitalizing the Fang clan? How can you take revenge for Mo underestimate?" Screech. Fang Yan lifted his foot and gently put it down. He stood there thinking for a moment, then turned around and walked back step by step. He walked slowly as if each step was difficult. However, his footsteps were smooth and did not slow down at all. Since he had already made his decision, there was nothing to regret. Not hesitating to fight. Not hesitating to die. "Are you really going?" This time, Green Bird couldn't understand Fang Yan. He had already run so far away, so why bother coming back? After all, the dragon god was not Gong Sun Chi. If Gong Sun Chi wanted to make a move on him, he could still stand in the middle and use the young chief to suppress him. However, if the dragon god made a move on him, who would dare to stop him? If he killed him with one slap, then even if the young chief had complaints, he probably wouldn't be able to say much, right? Fang Yan ignored Green Bird and walked straight to Gong Sun Chi, saying, "Lead the way." Gong Sun Chi looked at Fang Yan thoughtfully, thought for a moment and said, "If I were you, I would pretend not to hear it." As he spoke, he turned and walked towards the small courtyard. Fang Yan's expression was solemn as he followed behind Gong Sun Chi. Gong Sun Chi stopped at the door of a small courtyard, reached out and knocked on the door, saying, "Master, Fang Yan is here." "Come in," the dragon god said aloud. Crick. Gong Sun Chi pushed the door open and entered. Fang Yan also lifted his foot and stepped into the small courtyard. Under the eaves of the courtyard's corridor, there was a round stone table. Beside the table were two oval stone chairs, and on one of the stone chairs sat a man in a black robe. The man's face was thin, his eyes were long and narrow, and his skin was white and smooth. He looked somewhat feminine. However, the light in his eyes was restrained, and his hair was black and shiny. When he smiled, the wind blew, and when he did not smile, he exuded power. His eyes were slightly sunken, and his lips were thin and cold. One look and one would think that this person was a sinister and ruthless person. At least that was what Fang Yan thought. In his hand was a teacup, and he was tasting the Wudong Mountain vanilla tea that he had just brewed. "Master." Gong Sun Chi walked to stand behind his master, and then did not say a word. Fang Yan stood in the middle of the courtyard, sizing up the middle-aged man who was drinking tea. This man was one of the three dragons of Wuxia, the dragon god Tu Ming. He was the one who soared to the sky and knocked Mo Qingdi down from his pedestal. Even in the process of the battle, he did not hesitate to use a killing move and cut off the tendons of Mo Qingdi's hand, causing the Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi to become a cripple. In order to restore his pulse, he had no choice but to travel to the extremely cold lands to find the ice dragon. "Old drunkard," Fang Yan called softly in his heart. At this moment he was not afraid of the dragon god sitting in front of him. But he really missed the old drunkard who was far away in the foreign lands. They were his elder brother and master, and they were like his father to him. How was he now? Was he still alive? Fang Yan made up his mind. No matter what, he had to make a trip to the extremely cold lands. He had to bring the old drunkard back. No matter if he brought back a living person or a corpse, he had to bring him back to Swallow Dock, back to the Fong family. That was his home. Bulsh *T, return home in glory or be buried in the snow country. Such words could be said casually, who would actually take them seriously? Even if he did not find the ice dragon, even if he could not restore his pulse, Mo Qingdi was still the hero in Fang Yan's heart. The dragon god gently blew on the leaves in the teacup, blowing away the tea leaves, and then gently took a sip. He blew again and then took another sip. After 3 consecutive sips, the cup of fragrant tea was finished, and he put down the teacup in his hand. The dragon god looked at Fang Yan, who was in a state of deep thought, and asked aloud, "You two must have a good relationship, right?" Only then did Fang Yan recover from his thoughts of Mo Qingdi. He looked at the dragon god with a fierce gaze and said, "Very good. Then you have a reason to hate me." The dragon god said. Fang Yan grinned and said, "You're telling the truth." "But so what?" The dragon god said bitterly. Mo Qingdi's meridians have been broken, and his cultivation has gone down the drain. I heard that the Fang family has a son, Fang Yan, who comprehended the heart of Tai Chi at a young age. He also sailed against the current, and obtained the blessing of the light of Tai Chi that is rarely seen in 100 years. After a pause, the dragon god said bitterly, "What a pity. The heart of Tai Chi has become a stillborn fetus. There is no wind, no force, and the martial art does not advance. Fang Yan, how are you going to take revenge?" In order to save Yi Ro's life, Fang Yan used the mountain-moving technique to move the volcano into his body. After suffering such a heavy setback, Fang Yan's heart of Tai Chi became silent, and once again became a stillborn fetus. Fang Yan's physical state could not be hidden from a master like the dragon god, who could see his current cultivation level at a glance. Fang Yan grinned and said, "Will you kill me now?" "Of course not," the dragon god said with a smile. "How can you kill people at will in this red-walled courtyard?" "You see, you can't kill me now, so I can still leave your courtyard safely," Fang Yan said with a smile. "As long as you give me one more chance, I will have one more chance to kill you. Fang Yan, if you want to challenge my master, then defeat me first," Gong Sun Chi said fiercely. What kind of person was his master? Even a junior like Fang Yan dared to say that he would have one more chance to kill him. Did he think he was invisible? Fang Yan waved his hand and said to Gong Sun Chi, "My opponent is your master, you are not qualified." Fang Yan. Gong Sun Chi was furious and he struck with his palm. Pah. A ginkgo tree next to Fang Yan suddenly collapsed, its branches and leaves flew, and the trunk burst as if it had been hit by a heavy object. Fang Yan stood where he was without moving. He did not dodge and he did not even show fear in his eyes. He looked at the dragon god with a calm expression and said, "You see, you still don't dare to kill me. As long as I am alive, there is still a chance." Fang Yan. Gong Sun Chi wanted to strike again. All right. The dragon god looked at his disciple with difficulty and said with a smile, "Can you really kill him here?" "Master, he has gone too far, I have to teach him a lesson." "Don't talk about it if you can do it, but do it if you say you will," the dragon god admonished. Gong Sun Chi responded and stared at Fang Yan fiercely, but did not say anything else. Master was right, he would not talk about it. When he had beaten Fang Yan to the ground and broken his arms and legs, then he would tell him that this was the consequence of offending him. The dragon god's gaze was on Fang Yan and he said, "Is it good to underestimate the enemy? Whether he is good or not, you should know better than me, right?" Fang Yan said coldly. This kind of person was really hateful. When he broke the tendons in your arms and made you a useless person, he asked you with concern, asking you how have you been recently. This was not concern, this was a stab in the back. When one is at the peak, he seeks defeat alone. It is hard to find a friend in life, and it is also hard to find an opponent. Underestimate the enemy is able to be my enemy, and it is also my friend in life. The dragon god sighed and said, "I heard that he went to the land of extreme coldness to find an ice dragon to reconnect his meridians. If he really found such a magical item, underestimate the enemy will be able to return to the peak, and I will have a close friend that I can spar with and travel the heavenly axiom with. To me, traveling with him is also a great joy in life." Fang Yan laughed and said, "I only know that the dragon god has a high cultivation base, but I didn't expect you to be so thick-skinned. We are both walking the same path, and as a junior I really want to know, is your shamelessness innate or is it self-taught? Can you teach us juniors some lessons?" Impudent. Chapter 737. According to the ranking of the inner pugilistic world, Divine Dragon, who had long entered the heavenly Tao realm, could be considered a grandmaster of his generation. Although Fang Yen was young and talented with extraordinary achievements, he could only be considered a rookie in front of a peerless expert like Divine Dragon. A junior repeatedly ridiculing and belittling his seniors. This was not acceptable in any place. Gong Sun Chi was anxious to protect his master. After shouting "impudent," he leaped up and punched at Fang Yen. "Come back," Divine Dragon called out. Gong Sun Chi attacked with all his might and was extremely fast. Just as his fist was about to hit Fang Yan's chest, he heard his master shout for him to go back. His master's orders could not be disobeyed. He could still change his moves when he had used up all his strength. Boom! The fist passed by Fang Yan's face and hit the air with great force. A strong gust of wind slammed into Fang Yan's face. Gong Sun Chi's body flew backward in the air and landed lightly on the ground. He once again stood behind Divine Dragon. His face did not turn red nor did his heart skip a beat. It was as if nothing had happened. Fang Yen looked at him coldly, but he felt a tinge of regret. "Master, how can you let this kid be so arrogant in front of you?" Gong Sun Chi asked indignantly. Divine Dragon smiled faintly and looked at Fang Yen. "Do you know that you've been played by this kid?" "I don't know. I just want to help Master vent his anger." Gong Sun Chi looked at Fang Yen with a murderous look. He was already unhappy with this person and disliked his craziness. The last time they met he wanted to beat him up. If not for his lack of money, how could he have allowed him to be so arrogant? Now that he had repeatedly attacked and insulted his master as his disciple, he naturally had to step forward to relieve his master's boredom. "You idiot." Divine Dragon chuckled and said, "What is this place? How can you attack others as you please?" His provocation time and time again was nothing more than to provoke us, master and disciple, to take action against him, causing dissatisfaction within the Xian division and some of the higher-ups. I invited a guest but injured him. Is this how I treat a guest? What's more, this person was personally summoned by the young chief. Forgetting official duties for personal reasons was a huge crime. Besides, what do others think of me? Where do you think Master is? He was the one who started it, Gong Sun Chi said indignantly. Who would believe a single statement? Green Bird can testify. The Divine Dragon shook his head and looked at Fang Yen, saying, "Within the Red Wall, it is supposed to be quiet and peaceful, there should be no weapons. You managed to provoke Gong Sun Chi's anger with just a few words. You are rather quick-witted. However, have you ever thought that if I was the one who attacked just now, I'm afraid you would have lost your life with a single punch? Even if your backup plan is exquisite, so what?" Since his thoughts had been seen through, Fang Yen no longer played dumb and said, "Let's not talk about whether or not I can take a punch from the Divine Dragon. Even if I can't, I will just die. I am one of the best of the younger generation in Swallow Dock. Master just brought me to see the old chief and recommended me to be the new master of Swallow Dock. Now, when I am working hard for the country, I was killed and injured by you, master and disciple, because of your selfish thoughts. What does the old chief think of you? What does the young chief think of you? Also, although Swallow Dock doesn't have any heavenly path masters for the time being, they have many heroes. They probably won't allow their own family members to be bullied for no reason, right? The heroes of Swallow Dock didn't die in the hands of external enemies, but died in the hands of you, master and disciple. How will the country give Swallow Dock an explanation? Are you here to ruin my reputation? I don't know if you have a good reputation," Fang Yen said. Hearing this, Gong Sun Chi wanted to raise his knife and cut someone again. He was proud and arrogant and rarely took others seriously. But ever since he met this Fang Yen, why did he always have the urge to cut him with a knife every time he heard him say something? Fang Yen was indeed the most hateful person he had ever met in his life. Fang Yen ignored Gong Sun Chi's existence. He couldn't be bothered to argue with a brat. He looked at the Divine Dragon Tu Ming with a straight face and said, "I know I'm no match for you, and I've never thought of taking revenge for senior brother Emo Chingi by cutting off one of your arms and one of your legs. However, I dare not forget this hatred. If senior brother Emo comes back, he will come and take your hands and feet. If senior brother Emo doesn't come back, I will come and take your hands and feet. I don't have to worry about the old master laughing at me when I say this in front of you." That was indeed what I was thinking. It is also the goal of my life. I also know that you hate both of us, although I do not know where this hatred comes from. After all, during the sparring match, it was you who ruthlessly severed Emo Chingi's meridians and destroyed his cultivation. This is even more hateful and unacceptable than killing someone with a sword. You invited me to meet you in the courtyard, but my heart refused and I was afraid. Because I was worried that you would kill me without a second thought. But I still came in. I'm not doing this for my own reputation, but for Azure Dragon Mo Chingy's reputation. I don't want others to say that Mo Chingy has a cowardly junior brother who doesn't even have the courage to meet his senior brother's mortal enemy. And I don't want to hear this from your mouth. So I came in. I wanted to provoke you or your disciple Gong Sun Chi. I thought, as long as you and your disciple attack me, as long as I can escape from this courtyard, I will naturally have a way to ruin your reputation as a divine dragon. Of course, it doesn't matter even if I can't escape. If I am killed by you, I believe you will not be able to roam freely inside this red wall, right? There will always be people who will speak up for this, and there will always be people who will sympathize with an innocent dead person like me. This is the worst-case scenario. If this is the result, there is nothing I can't accept. I look forward to better things, but who asked my cultivation to not be as profound as yours? Reasonable and well-founded. The divine dragon's eyes lit up. He smiled and said, courageous and resourceful. And the rarest of all, affectionate and loyal. Qing Niao stood at the door, not daring to come in. Hearing the divine dragon's evaluation of Fang Yen, she opened her mouth wide in shock. The divine dragon looked kind and amiable, and did not have the slightest bit of arrogance when interacting with others. But everyone knew that his arrogance was hidden in his bones. He interacted with everyone, but he also looked down on everyone. But no one expected him to evaluate Fang Yen like this, using the word excellent 6 times to describe Fang Yan's excellence. The shameless hooligan, was he really that good? The muscles on Fang Yan's face twitched. He thought to himself, did I really use my talent to conquer this old man? Otherwise, why would he praise me so hard? I just want to live. I just want to live. Fang Yen said in a low voice. If you want to kill me, I can't stop you. I can only ask you for some small interest from my death. How is this considered courageous and resourceful? If I were a really smart person when you invited me into the courtyard to meet, I would have run away. The divine dragon laughed and pointed at Fang Yen. Running away is indeed the smartest choice. But, as you said, if I invited you but you didn't come in, wouldn't people laugh at Mo Xiaodi for having such a junior brother? That's why I came. Fang Yen said. Now that we've met, if Elder Divine Dragon has nothing else to say, then I'll take my leave first. I don't dare to let the young chief wait too long. Have a cup of cold tea before you leave, the Divine Dragon said. Otherwise it's my fault for not treating my guest well. He took out a brand new teacup, lifted the teapot and filled the cup with tea. Then, with a flick of his finger, the teacup flew behind Fang Yen. Fang Yen dodged sideways and the teacup flew past him but crashed into him from the front. Fang Yen no longer dodged. He calmed his mind, gathered his qi in his right hand and reached out to catch the teacup. The teacup landed lightly in his hand, and there was nothing strange. Just as Fang Yen was about to finish the tea in one gulp, the teacup suddenly exploded. Bang! The tea splashed everywhere. Fang Yan's face was covered with tea, and a tea leaf was stuck on the bridge of his nose. Fang Yen turned around angrily, and stared at the divine dragon with a murderous look. This was a humiliation. Gong Sun Chi laughed, pointed at Fang Yan's embarrassed look and said, Fang Yen, master only invited you to a cup of tea, why did you bite the teacup? The divine dragon looked at Fang Yen suspiciously, and did not say a word, nor did he look proud. With his identity and status, this little trick couldn't increase his beauty. It was just a joke to test the waters. Fang Yan's face was dark, from red to purple, from purple to pale, and then back to its natural color. Fang Yen cupped his fists and said calmly, Thank you, Mr. Divine Dragon, for the tea, it's delicious. Fang Yen wiped the tea stain on his face and the tea leaf on the bridge of his nose, and strode toward the door of the small courtyard. The green bird bowed slightly to the divine dragon, and then quickly left with Fang Yen. For some reason, seeing Fang Yan's appearance after being bullied, she did not dare to mock him. The divine dragon looked at Fang Yan's back as he left, his fingers tapping on the table lightly, and did not speak for a long time. Master, it's good to teach this arrogant boy a lesson, so that he knows his place. Gong Sun Chi called out. The divine dragon did not respond, and he did not send the guest off with tea to teach Fang Yen a lesson. He looked at the teacup in front of him and asked, Did the young chief also summon you to carry out a mission? Yes. Gong Sun Chi nodded. I heard that he wants me to carry out a mission with Fang Yen, and I was thinking of refusing, the divine dragon sighed softly and said, "This boy is extremely dangerous, far more dangerous than the green dragon. Do not underestimate him and work with him at his peak. You must be careful." Gong Sun-chi was shocked. Chapter 738. Gong Sun-chi was born in the Luo River martial family, the Gongsun family. He was also the disciple of the divine dragon, Ku Ming. His family was rich in knowledge and he was talented. He had achieved extraordinary accomplishments at a young age. It made him arrogant, believing that the heroes of the world were mediocre. Gong Sun-chi found it hard to accept that his master had praised Fang Yen and said, "This person is extremely dangerous, far more dangerous than the Azure Dragon when he was at his peak." His master had also reminded him, when working with him, he must be on his guard. "Master, don't boost the morale of others and belittle your own. I admit that Fang Yen is a little clever, but you said that he is stronger than Mo Qingdi at his peak. I'm afraid that's not enough to convince your disciple. Mo Qingdi is a heavenly Dao realm expert. Before Master defeated him, he reigned supreme in the world and was almost invincible. Fang Yen originally relied on the heart of Taiji, but now, after Master's experiments, the heart of Taiji is dead. What's there to be afraid of at such a realm? It's fine if he doesn't provoke me, but if he dares to pull those annoying tricks in front of me, I'll draw my sword and slay him." Gong Sun-chi truly hated Fang Yen this time. Fang Yen had provoked him time and time again in front of his master, but he was unable to humiliate him. Finally, his master had to take action personally. He felt extremely stifled, unable to vent his anger. Strength doesn't just refer to martial arts cultivation. Ku Ming knew his disciple's state of mind like the back of his hand. He said with a clear warning tone, "This kid is very scheming. He has the ability to kill invisibly while chatting. I'm not worried about you fighting him head-on. However, carrying out missions is fraught with peril. If he were to use extreme means on you during the mission, how are you to defend against it? He can make you panic with just a few words, and I'm afraid that his crafty plots and schemes are also impossible to guard against. He doesn't dare to fight me head-on, and only knows how to use those underhanded tricks. I look down on such a person." Gong Sun-chi sneered. "However, since Master finds him difficult to deal with, I will naturally be careful when carrying out missions. I don't want to fail miserably and become a laughing stock." "That's good." Ku Ming nodded. Gong Sun-chi thought of something else and asked, "Master, did you send tea to Fang Yen to test Fang Yen?" With a puzzled expression, Lao Ming said softly, "This kid's realm is rather strange. His Tai Chi heart is clearly dead, but there's surging heat flowing in his body, as if he's in a state of Qi deviation. Maybe he has a cold and a fever," Gong Sun-chi said sarcastically. He was not afraid of Fang Yen at all. He was not afraid of Fang Yen who possessed the heart of Taiji, and he was not afraid of Fang Yen whose heart of Taiji had become a dead fetus. "I hope so." He gently tapped his fingers on the table, closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. After leaving the small divine dragon courtyard, Fang Yan's arms, which were hidden in his sleeves, trembled slightly. Just now he had been forcefully restraining himself, but now he could no longer bear it. The dragon god's kung fu was unfathomable. He had only used his finger to flick it lightly, and he had used all his strength to reach out to catch it, but he was still shaken to this extent by the teacup. Walking behind Fang Yan, Qin Yao noticed the strangeness of Fang Yan's arm, but she did not say anything. When Fang Yan spoke he felt hateful, but when Fang Yan was silent he felt afraid. When they reached a fork in the road, Fang Yan did not know the direction. Qin Yao quickly stepped forward and said to Fang Yan, "I'll lead the way." Looking at Qin Yao's graceful figure, Fang Yan followed her into a small red building. The small building was quiet and secluded, and there were no signs of people. Qin Yao swiped the black card at the door of the small building, and the glass door immediately shrank to both sides. Walking forward there was another glass door. She swiped the card again and the glass door opened up. There was no trace of its existence. Qin Yao stopped at the door of the elevator. There were no buttons on the elevator. Qin Yao swiped the card on a red dot, and then a silver hole appeared on the wall. Qin Yao moved her eyes over to do a retinal scan, and then the elevator door opened with a ding sound. Qin Yao walked into the elevator and Fang Yan followed closely behind. The elevator whooshed downwards and after a few seconds it stopped. Dang! The elevator door opened and in front of them was a wide hall. There were many people practicing with equipment in the hall, and there were two men fighting fiercely in the ring. Fang Yan glanced over there and just happened to see a man with pigtails twisting the arm of a bald strong man. Qing Niao did not take Fang Yen to the hall, but took him to a remote passage. At the door of a silver steel office, Qing Niao glanced at Fang Yen and said, "Wait a moment." Qing Niao knocked on the glass door and the glass door opened. Qing Niao stood at the door and made a standard military salute and said, "Chief, I've brought Fang Yen. Invite Fang Yen in." A calm man's voice sounded. Qing Niao moved to the side and Fang Yen walked past her. The room was wide, but the decoration was extremely simple. There was a desk, an office chair, and a computer on the desk. Behind it was a row of bookshelves with a few books on them. Other than that, there was nothing else in the room. Sitting on the office chair was a middle-aged man wearing glasses. He had a kind face, and when he smiled it was like a spring breeze. Although it was the first time they met, Fang Yen was no stranger to this man, because he often saw this familiar face on TV. The man sat on the chair and looked at Fang Yen with a smile. He did not greet Fang Yen, nor did he say anything about taking a seat. Of course, there were no extra chairs in the room. After a long time, the man finally said, "When I first met Underestimate, he was as young as you. He was graceful and arrogant. At that time, I joked that he was the most handsome man in our Shen division. Now that I see Fang Yen, I have the same feeling as when I met Underestimate. What an elegant and handsome young man." With the young chief praising him like this, Fang Yen could no longer remain silent. He respectfully bowed to the chief and said with a smile, "Thank you, chief. I'm not as good as senior. Each has his own merits." The young chief's gaze was always on Fang Yan's face and he said, "But the two of you are indeed a little different. At least in terms of character, you're very different. When I praised him for underestimating the enemy, he gladly accepted it. He's not as humble as you." Fang Yen smiled again and said, "That's why I'm not as good as senior." The young chief smiled and shook his head, saying, "Fang Yen, from the time you were born to the time you walked into this office, all your resume is in my computer. I've studied it for a long time and I have a certain understanding of you, right?" If someone else had said this, Fang Yen would not have believed it. But when this young chief said this to him, Fang Yen knew that there was not the slightest bit of exaggeration. If he wanted a person's information, it was just a matter of saying a word. "I hope I didn't disappoint the chief," Fang Yen said in a low voice. "This was not the time to make jokes. This was not the time to make jokes." "I'm not disappointed," the young chief said with a smile. He pushed away the chair and stood up, striding over to Fang Yen, sizing up Fang Yen, who was a head taller than him at a close distance, and said, "And you're far more outstanding than I imagined. Even more outstanding than Underestimate when he was young. Perhaps in the path of martial arts, Underestimate is more outstanding than you. But that's only because Underestimate is more diligent than you, and wholeheartedly devoted to the pursuit of martial arts. And you? Sometimes I'm really curious, what exactly is in your mind? The things you've experienced, the way you handle dangerous situations, it's really admirable." The young chief looked at Qing Niao and said, "You already know where this place is, right?" "I know," Fang Yen said with a nod. "Qing Niao has already introduced me to her on the way here. She's a very meticulous person. This is the Shen department. I've long heard of her great name, and my heart is still surging with excitement." Qing Niao looked at Fang Yen gratefully. When the young chief asked that question, Qing Niao's heart almost jumped out. She was in charge of receiving people, so she had the responsibility to introduce related matters to him. But because she was full of hostility towards Fang Yen, she had been delaying this responsibility. Later, after entering the Red Wall, she met the Dragon God and his disciple, and this matter was delayed even more. She thought that according to Fang Yan's character, he would definitely say something bad about her in front of the young chief. Unexpectedly, not only did he not do that, but he even said a few good words for her. This man was really a strange fellow. "Yes, this is the Shen department," the young chief said. "I've been in charge of the work of the Shen department all these years, including the matters related to Swallow Dock. But Swallow Dock is a rather special existence, and many times we still need Comrade Nianyu to come forward and communicate. So, on behalf of the Shen department, I welcome you to join us." The Comrade Nianyu that the young chief mentioned was the old chief that Sir had brought Fang Yen to meet, because the old chief was mainly in charge of the work of the military. In fact, the nature of the work overlapped with the young chief in some aspects. Swallow Dock did not belong to the Shen department, and more often than not, they worked closely with the military. And in some special matters they had to work together with the Shen department. Swallow Dock was under the dual leadership of the old chief and the young chief. Of course, it was in parallel with the military and the Shen department, and was an independent entity. The affairs inside were complicated, and even the current Fang Yan could not figure them out. It's my honor. I also have to thank the chief for your help before, and Swallow Doc will remember it, Fang Yan said gratefully. The young chief naturally knew what Fang Yan was talking about and said, someone crossed the line, so of course we have to kick him back. But it's just a joke between kids, don't take it to heart. Yes. Fang Yan agreed and pondered the meaning of the young chief's words. The young chief glanced at the time on his watch and asked in confusion, where's Gong Sun Chi? Didn't you inform him? Gong Sun Chi had just had a conflict with him, so naturally he was unwilling to immediately follow behind him to meet the young chief. Hearing the young chief's question, Fang Yan pretended to be casual and said, when I came over, I was even invited by Mr. Dragon God and Brother Gong Sun to the courtyard for tea. Brother Gong Sun should be here soon, right? Green Bird's heart sank, but she did not look at Fang Yan's eyes. This guy killed people without leaving a trace, he really was not a good person. Chapter 739. The trees were tall and the shadows were eerie. Venomous snakes circled and ferocious beasts stood in great numbers. This was an oppressive primitive forest that made it hard for people to breathe. The river gurgled. A snow-white rabbit walked out from the grass. After looking around, it carefully walked to the river to drink water. It drank 2 mouthfuls and suddenly looked up as if it was frightened. It looked around again and didn't find anything suspicious. Then it lowered its head to drink water again. After drinking 2 mouthfuls, it raised its head again. The cycle repeated again and again. It looked extremely insecure. Whoosh, a snake as thick as a human leg came out of the river. It swallowed the white rabbit in one gulp. Walala, water splashed everywhere. Because it rushed too quickly, the snake's upper body was as tall as a person in the air. Pa, its strength was exhausted. The snake's head fell. Then it slammed heavily into the river. The snake sank to the bottom of the river and disappeared. Only countless ripples were left on the surface of the river. Because of this incident, the forest was in chaos. The birds in the forest flew away and the bats jumped around. Some small animals hiding around the river ran away, knocking down leaves and branches. The scene was chaotic, but soon it was quiet again. The strong preyed on the weak and deceived each other. This was the main theme of this primitive forest where law and morality couldn't cover. Tranquility. A deathly tranquility. The trees were tall and large with lush leaves. They clustered together like an endless green umbrella, blocking the sun, moon, stars, and people's sight. Looking up, only a corner of the sky could be seen through the leaves. The sky was gray. It looked like it was about to rain. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, a group of black figures rushed over. Their footsteps were light and fast like lightning. The lake that was several meters wide was no problem for them. With a tap of their toes, they had already jumped from the east bank to the west. Tranquility. Once again, deathly tranquility was restored. Cha-cha-cha, a group of men in green camouflage carrying all kinds of high-tech weapons came over. Their movements weren't as agile as the men in black. When they ran, they made clanking sounds. Their speed wasn't as fast as the men in black. When they ran to the river, they carried their weapons and waded into the water, but this group was large in number. There were at least 30 to 40 people. Moreover, they had a clear division of labor and had great teamwork. Some were the vanguard, some were the cover, and some were the detectives looking for suspicious traces. They were silent. Other than the occasional command terms issued by the commander, they did not say anything else. They were cold-blooded killing machines. How could a machine talk? However, their eyes were filled with anger. The Millennium Palace was the most well-guarded place in the world. It was a palace that only gods could enter. However, 2 men in black had barged in and taken away the core secret of the Millennium Palace. To God's protectors like them, this was an insult, a provocation, and something they could not accept. The Archbishop flew into a rage and smashed his favorite bone cup. He mobilized dozens of God's guards and countless soldiers to issue an SSS-level kill order. No matter what, he had to bring those 2 audacious devils back. If he was dead, he wanted to see his corpse. More importantly, he had to get back what they had taken. The God's Guardian had people who were good at tracking. They released the White Eagles, hunting hounds, and activated the surveillance cameras in the area. Finally, they locked onto the target's location in the southeast. As a result, the primordial forest became a battlefield for both sides to fight and kill. They searched the forest for 2 days. Originally, they were worried that they were searching in the wrong direction or that they had fallen into the enemy's diversionary tactic. But 2 days ago at 4 in the afternoon, they discovered the target of a black-clothed man. Both sides engaged in an intense battle. 7 gods' guardians surrounded and attacked a black-clothed man. When they seriously injured him and prepared to kill him or capture him alive, another black-clothed man shouted, "Eighth brother's tooth leak," and rushed out. While running, he fired a bullet from his pistol and took out a long sword from his waist to join the battle. The masked black-clothed man attacked ferociously. After he joined the battle, the heavily injured black-clothed man was finally able to escape. The black-clothed man fought against the 7 gods' guardians by himself. After chopping off the arm of a god general, he shouted a few words such as "Cry and you will dig together," and "Damn it," before looking for an opportunity to escape and disappeared without a trace. These damned East Asians. The Millennium Palace had expended so much manpower and resources to intercept the 2 thieves, but not only did they fail to bring them back, but one of their divine generals was also injured. That was an incomparably noble divine general, an important figure who could drink afternoon tea with the archbishop. The archbishop smashed another human head cup that he liked and began to increase the reward and punishment system. Anyone who could kill one of the black-clothed men would be promoted to a god general, regardless of their previous identity. Thus these people all went crazy. Their eyes were bloodshot. They gathered in groups and combed through the forest again and again. No matter what, they would not allow the 2 damned fellows to return to East Asia. Even if they did, they would kill them and kill them. This was the consequence of offending God. Despicable East Asians, they cursed in their hearts. Cha-cha-cha, another group of men in red robes jumped over the river. They were noble and reserved. Even in this uninhabited forest, they maintained a good image. Northwest direction, 23 degrees. Traces of broken branches found. Fresh wildflower petals fell from the Red Devil Valley. Southeast direction, 11 degrees. Startled birds flew away. Using a language that outsiders could not understand, the earphones in their ears sent out all kinds of information. They were responsible for categorizing the information. We must kill the 2 demons who broke into the temple. This is the price of blasphemy. I must kill my way to the East Asian temple and take revenge on their fake gods. When they were far away, the river regained its tranquility. Puff, puff, a string of rapid bubbles appeared in the grass by the river. A face slowly appeared on the surface of the river, like a pale corpse. Whoosh, after listening carefully for a while and finding no dangerous movements, half of his head emerged from the river. No one would have thought that at the place where the white rabbit was drinking, there was a man hiding beside the big snake. Gong Sun Chi climbed out of the river and pulled out the 2 blood-sucking leeches on his body. Then he looked at the wound on his left rib and frowned. He fought 7 immortal generals alone. When he avoided the joint attack of the first 2 immortal generals, his ribs were accidentally cut by the 3rd immortal general. The 3rd immortal general wanted to stab his heart, but fortunately he reacted quickly and avoided the heavy blade. Otherwise he would have been dead by now. Fortunately, Fang Yen returned and rejoined the battle, breaking their siege. If not for Fang Yen, he would have been dead by now. A few days ago he and Fang Yen met the young chief. Then they circled around the earth and hid their identities to reach the place where the gods had descended. With the help of a spy, the 2 of them passed through many checkpoints and arrived at the sacrificial temple of Millennium Palace. From there they stole their target. If they wanted to take the treasure, they would trigger the alarm switch of Millennium Palace. If they did not want to trigger the alarm switch, they could only not touch the treasure. It was not in line with Fang Yen and Gong Sun Chi's character to enter a treasure mountain but not get the treasure. Thus, the 2 of them broke the protective wall and ran away with the treasure. After that, they began to encounter a difficult and dangerous escape. The strength of the enemy was beyond Gong Sun Chi's expectations. Although they had seen a lot of information on people on the plain, in Gong Sun Chi's opinion, it was just some boasting of the Westerners. Only Wuxia's martial arts were real martial arts, and only Wuxia's martial arts were real martial arts. Then he was stabbed into this state. Gong Sun Chi took out a bottle of red potion from the depths of his clothes. He unscrewed the cap and drank half of it. Then he poured the other half on the wound. After soaking in the river, the red and swollen flesh that was about to burst open immediately began to reduce the inflammation. The wound also began to heal. With the development of modern technology, all kinds of military medicine had magical effects. If he did not use this medicine to stop the bleeding, he would have been eaten by all kinds of snakes and crocodiles when he was soaking in the river. For a martial artist of Gong Sun Chi's level, this kind of wound was not life-threatening. However, in this primitive old forest with so many people chasing after him, this wound was very fatal. He could not use too much force or too much chi. If he used too much force or chi, the wound would be torn open. At that time, blood would flow out. He would bleed all the way as he ran. Even if he did not die from bleeding, the blood that flowed out would be the best guide. It would bring a large number of immortal generals and death warriors. The sound of the grass's soft body being stepped on could be heard. Gong Sun Chi held the dagger in his hand. His body leaped high like a cheetah and stabbed in a certain direction in the forest behind him. A man in black rolled out and said in a low voice, "It's me." Gong Sun Chi stopped attacking and looked at Fang Yen in surprise. Since he separated from Fang Yen 2 days ago, he had not heard from him. He thought that he had already fled back to his country. Wasn't this what he was capable of doing? Now that it seemed that Fang Yen had returned, he could not hide the joy in his heart. Meeting an old friend in a foreign land, even if it was a familiar idiot, was something to be happy about. Chapter 740. In Gong Sun Chi's eyes, Fang Yen was indeed an idiot. You dared to challenge your own master with that small physique of yours? If I were my master, I would have slapped you to death with one palm. How could I allow you to humiliate me like this? Some people say that a brother is someone you can trust with your back on the battlefield. Gong Sun Chi and Fang Yen were not brothers, so he would not trust his back to the other. Fang Yen would take a knife for his brother, but Gong Sun Chi had 100% reason to believe that he would stab him a few times. Gong Sun Chi did not like Fang Yen, not in the past and not now. He did not like him before he boarded the plane, and he did not like him after he landed. At first, he did not like him because of the great hatred between the two families. His master, the dragon god, had painstakingly defeated Mo Qingdi, the green dragon, and broke Mo Qingdi's tendons. This caused Mo Qingdi to become a cripple, and also caused the Fang family's luck to plummet. Although the dragon god had painstakingly defeated Mo Qingdi, this did not stop Gong Sun Chi from hating and viewing Fang Yen as an enemy, because he knew that the Fang family would never forget this hatred, and they would definitely find a way to seek revenge. This was also the reason why people in ancient times liked to play the game of cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. Later on, he did not like him because he did not like Fang Yen as a person. He felt that Fang Yen was too proud, too arrogant, and did not understand the principles of how to conduct oneself. His master was the dragon god, and it was natural for him to be proud and arrogant. Your senior brother Mo Qingdi has become a useless drunkard. What is there for you to be proud of? When you meet me, you call me brother, and when you eat, you give me a toast. Isn't this a matter of course? What he hated the most was the way Fang Yen spoke, as if every word and sentence carried a halo of mockery. If you could listen to his complete sentence and still resist the urge to cut him in half, it proved that you were very good at keeping your composure. A battle of words. He did not understand the weight of these words before. In the past, he didn't understand the weight of these words. Ever since he met Fang Yen, he deeply understood that some people were really King despicable. However, Gong Sun Chi was still very happy to see Fang Yen. This didn't mean that he started to like Fang Yen, but because he thought that if he couldn't escape, Fang Yen couldn't escape either. Fang Yen was dressed in black and had a black hat over his head. Only his facial features were exposed. This was to prevent others from spying on their true identities when they were on the move. There were many tears on his clothes, some were cut by swords, some were pierced by bullets, and most of them were torn by the thorns and branches in the forest. Their nocturnal clothes were specially made, but they could not withstand such a degree of magic damage and tearing. Phew! Fang Yen took a deep breath and pulled down the mask on his head. His face was painted black and so were his lips and teeth. The Prince Charming of Swallow Dock looked more like a psycho than anything else. Because of the hot forest, Fang Yen was sweating profusely, and his hair was wet. It was as if he had just climbed out of the river like Gong Sun Chi. Fang Yen looked at the wound under Gong Sun Chi's ribs and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" "I won't die," Gong Sun Chi replied. "It's good that you won't die." Fang Yen said happily, "One more person means one more power. Even if you can't kill people, you can help me lure some people away. You used me as bait?" Gong Sun Chi said angrily. "Don't be angry, don't be angry." Fang Yen waved his hand and said, "How can I use you as bait? You are my comrade in arms, my brother. In this strange forest, the two of us can only go hand in hand and live and die together." Gong Sun Chi felt a little better. Although he didn't want to be a comrade in arms or a brother with Fang Yen, it was still in his interest to go hand in hand and live and die together. He was injured now, but he was injured. In fact, he was a burden. The fact that Fang Yin was willing to bring him along proved that this person's character wasn't so bad that it would make people's hair stand on end. Which direction did you come from? Gong Sun Chi asked the question that he was concerned about. From the northwest, Fang Yin said. I set up some traps there, then ran along the Red Devil Valley for a long time, then returned along the original path. Now they should be chasing towards the Red Devil Valley, thinking that we took that route. After all, that route is the easiest to walk to the border of Myanmar. As long as we pass the border, I don't think they would dare to bring so many people to look for us. Gong Sun Chi pointed to the small river beside him and said in a low voice, I was hiding under the tree roots by the river just now, and 3 groups of people passed by. There were god generals, god servants with heavy weapons on the periphery and their priests. I know. Fang Yin nodded and said. I waited for them to pass by before coming back to find you. How did you know I was here? I didn't know before, but I followed their search route and came back. I just happened to see you climbing out of the river. Gong Sun Chi frowned and looked up at the thick clouds that were getting lower and lower in the sky. He said, What do we do now? It's very difficult. Fang Yan's expression was also quite serious. He said, We are now being attacked from both the front and the back. The first group of people who were chasing us ran ahead of us, and they may have already set up a trap at the edge of the forest. If we want to enter Myanmar from the border, we may fall into their ambush. There are still people coming from behind, and once they find out where we are, they will be able to surround us from all directions, constantly reducing the space we can move around. In the end, there will be less and less space for us to move around, and we will still be trapped by them. Gong Sun Chi snorted and said, I know all this. Let me ask you, what should we do now? Seeing the dissatisfaction on Gong Sun Chi's face, Fang Yin thought to himself, this guy really doesn't want to admit defeat. Even now he is still arrogant. He smiled and said, You don't have to worry, no matter what, I will not leave you behind. Fang Yan's words irritated Gong Sun Chi's sensitive nerves, and a touch of deep red appeared on his pale face. He said angrily, What do you mean by you will not leave me behind no matter what? Do I need you? I can still go back without you, but you better pray for yourself. You and I don't see eye to eye, let's separate here and run for our lives. That won't do. Fang Yin said with a serious face, You are seriously injured. Without my help, you will only die. My death is my own business. What does it have to do with you? In that case. Fang Yin smiled and said, You stay behind, I will go first. You, Fang Yin patted Gong Sun Chi on the shoulder and said, Take care. Fang Yin glanced at Gong Sun Chi, and then quickly disappeared into the forest like a nimble rabbit. Gong Sun Chi was stunned for a long time, and the muscles on his face kept twitching. This bastard, he abandoned me just like that? Didn't we agree that we are comrades and brothers? Whoosh! Fang Yin slid down from a towering tree, covered the mouth of the divine servant at the back of the team, and used a sharp blade to cut his neck. Blood spurted out, but because Fang Yan's gloved hand covered the wound, it did not splatter everywhere. His body first stiffened and then slowly became limp. His soul was taken away by the god of death, and all the strength in his body dissipated. His legs softened and he fell down. Fang Yin dragged his body and slowly put him down on the grass. The gun in his hand fell to the ground, but Fang Yin lightly kicked it with the tip of his foot, and the gun flew into the air again. He picked it up in one go to avoid making any noise. Screech! A grasshopper in the grass was startled and jumped toward the tree trunk. Someone in the team ahead turned around. Pa! A bullet flew past the side of Fang Yan's face. Fang Yin did not stop, and his body rolled toward a tree in front of him that was as thick as a person. Pa 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 pa! Rows of bullets swept over, hitting the place where Fang Yin was just standing. If Fang Yin was a little later, his body would have been smashed into a pulp by now. The target has appeared, the devil is here. Someone shouted. The soldiers immediately found cover and began to bombard the tree that Fang Yin was hiding in. The bark of the tree was smashed, the trunk was riddled with countless holes, and the weeds under the tree were charred black. However, there was no sound behind the tree as if the target had been killed. The commander issued a ceasefire order, and all the divine servants in the bunkers immediately stopped firing. They waited quietly, waiting for news of Fang Yan's escape or his death. Unfortunately, after waiting for a long time, there was no movement behind the tree. There was a deathly silence. The commander spread his fingers and clenched them into a fist. The soldiers understood and immediately spread out, walking toward the tree step by step. Pa! A sound came from behind them. They quickly turned around, raised their guns and fired at the source of the sound. Pa 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 pa! Bullets flew, and the black shadow disappeared in a flash. Another divine servant's corpse was left on the ground. That damn devil, he had somehow sneaked up behind them. The commander was furious. He raised his arm and waved it in the air. The divine servants understood the commander's intention, and they turned around and rushed toward the place where the black shadow disappeared. They fired as they ran, but did they find any trace of the target? Maybe they would be lucky and hit the devil's head or heart. Fang Yin ran through the dense forest and returned fire with his gun. Eighth brother's teeth. Fang Yin roared angrily. He felt that his Japanese was getting better and better, at least the sentence was very good. Chapter 741. Sweat and blood mixed together, turning into a pungent smell that even Fang Yin himself could not accept. This smell was strong for a long time, and it was difficult to hide from the hounds and the white eagles. All the disguises and traps that Fang Yin had set up previously were no longer effective, and the divine generals and priests who had received the request for reinforcements were gathering here on a large scale. They surrounded Fang Yin from all directions according to the satellite positioning system, and were constantly compressing the space that Fang Yin could move in. When the space became smaller and Fang Yin had no place to hide or take a detour, the only thing that awaited him was death. Or something even more terrifying and cruel than death, capture alive. The killing was intense. Fang Yin's gun had long been emptied of bullets, and he did not have a magazine that could be changed, so he could only use it as a heavy weapon and throw it out to smash people. For an expert of his level, even falling leaves and falling flowers could hurt people, let alone such a heavy metal weapon. Therefore, when he used the empty gun to smash the head of a divine servant, causing him to fall to the ground with his face covered in blood, his body had already burrowed into a dense wild banana bush. "He's a demon, kill this demon." Requesting reinforcements, he ran into the banana forest, reporting the latitude. Everyone spread out, be careful of his sneak attacks. This small team originally had more than 20 people, but in the process of chasing Fang Yin found an opportunity to kill more than a dozen of them. They only had about 10 people now, and they were in hot pursuit, waiting for reinforcements. The divine generals and priests would also know their current movements based on the satellite positioning system on them. In addition, they had to be on guard against Fang Yan's counterattack and the annihilation of the entire team. They were not afraid of death, and they had long given their lives and everything to the gods, but they did not want to die in the hands of a demon. Fang Yin used his brilliant skills and sharp killing methods to obtain their recognition, and became the demon in their words. The sky was getting darker and the air was getting thicker. They were no longer breathing fresh oxygen, but an unknown substance that was warm like burning gypsum. It was going to rain. Let's have a rain, Fang Yin thought to himself. His body could adapt to any kind of environment, but he really didn't like this kind of suffocating work, as if he was fighting for his life in a huge wet spider web that he couldn't break free from. The banana trees were tall and dense. Large patches of leaves connected to form a barrier, blocking the vision of those who came later. The group of divine servants rushed in and found that they had lost track of Fang Yin. The commander gestured for everyone to be careful and then divided the remaining team members into 3 groups. He led one group to the center line, while the other 2 formed a fan-shaped encirclement on the left and right, heading deeper into the darkness. Swoosh, a colorful venomous snake that was more than a meter long slithered down from the top of the banana tree and pounced toward the commander who was walking at the front. It opened its sharp mouth and bit towards the commander's neck with its long and sharp fangs. Screech, a red light flashed. The commander held a gun in one hand and a tri-edge bayonet in the other. When the venomous snake pounced, he took out the bayonet and cut off the venomous snake's head. For people like them, this kind of monster really didn't have any deterrence. The snake's blood spurted out. He liked the refreshing feeling of cleanly cutting off the target's head. It would have been even better if he had cut off the heads of the 2 men in black. Just when he was praising himself in his heart, a crisis came. Fang Yin, who had disappeared without a trace, reappeared. He leaped up from the hole covered in dried leaves and crawled on the ground like a giant lizard. He stabbed the dagger in his hand at the lower 3 arteries of the divine servants. Whoosh, 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 he stabbed 3 times. 3 divine servants covered their crotches and rolled on the ground. The 3 men lost the joy of being a man and were castrated by him. Pa pa pa, a dense barrage of bullets flew towards Fang Yan's body that was rolling on the ground. Fang Yin rolled on the ground twice and his body once again disappeared from their sight. "He's a damn devil?" they cursed angrily. Fang Yan's speed was too fast, so fast that it was simply unbelievable. When they discovered him, he had already rushed in front of them and killed them. When they raised their guns to counterattack, he disappeared again. This was not an opponent of the same level at all. Before the arrival of the black-robed divine generals and red-robed high priests, these divine servants were just a group of pitiful cannon fodder used to restrain the enemy. Just when these divine servants shouted and wanted to chase after him, Fang Yen turned around and attacked again. Screech! He threw the dagger in his hand and stabbed it into the throat of a divine servant. The divine servant covered his throat, and before he could fall to the ground, he had already flashed past him, pulled out the dagger from his throat and stabbed the chest of another divine servant. Fang Yen had to get rid of all these people. He knew that they had tracking devices on them. He didn't want them to follow him like a pack of wild dogs. Once again the battle became intense. Gong Sun Chi was lying in a hidden tree hole, his mouth quickly chewing a ripe wild banana. He didn't escape in the direction that Fang Yen had left. Instead, he found a more secluded tree hole nearby to hide. Now was the time when the divine servants and divine generals of the Millennium Palace were searching for him. His physical condition wasn't very optimistic. If he encountered a situation where there were 7 against 1 again, he wouldn't be able to hold on. Of course, even if he encountered 1 or 2 divine generals, his situation wouldn't be optimistic either. However, he wouldn't admit this point. The injury under his armpit was very serious. Not only was his flesh cut, but even his bones were injured. Although he had used an effective genetic agent to heal the wound, it was only on the surface. The internal injury still couldn't be healed, and it would take a long time to recover. He couldn't use force or chi, and there were strong enemies in front of him and pursuers behind him. In such a dangerous ancient forest, there weren't many options left for him. Am I going to die? Gong Sun Chi suddenly had this thought. Tui tui tui. Gong Sun Chi hurriedly chased this inauspicious thought out of his head. How could he die? He was the disciple of the dragon god. He was a genius, wise and powerful. He hadn't reached the peak of his life yet. How could he die? Before coming out to carry out the mission, he never thought about the word death, because he felt that such a thing was very far away from him. Who could kill him in this big world? But now he had no choice but to face such a tragic and bitter problem. He could really be killed. In this strange ancient forest where there was only killing and no humanity, he had no one to rely on and was seriously injured. His only teammate. Thinking of Fang Yen, Gong Sun Chi gritted his teeth in hatred. That bastard, he abandoned his comrade just like that and ran away on his own? It's fine if I die in battle, but if I go back, I'll definitely report him. Gong Sun Chi made this decision in his heart. But soon he overturned this thought. If he went back and reported that Fang Yen had heartlessly abandoned his comrade, wouldn't that be admitting to the higher-ups that he was inferior to Fang Yen and that he had to rely on Fang Yan's help during the mission to return? This wouldn't do. The proud Gong Sun Chi wouldn't accept the fact that he was inferior to Fang Yen. I'll never go out on a mission with Fang Yen again, he thought to himself. Moreover, he shouldn't have gone out on a mission with Fang Yen in the first place. The two of them were born to be mortal enemies. His master had seriously injured his senior, so he hated his master and himself. How could he help him? It was already kind of him not to hack him to death when they met just now. Could it be that he thought that he would definitely die in his current situation, so he didn't kill him? He thought that he couldn't break out of the encirclement. Since he had nothing to do here, Gong Sun Chi opened his brain and let his imagination run wild. There were some things that he had to think about and some things that he had to be on guard against. If Fang Yen really wanted to take this opportunity to silence him and avenge his senior, Gong Sun Chi really couldn't do anything to him. Fang Yen didn't need to do anything. He only needed to lure the godly generals to his hiding place. Thinking of this possibility, he quickly peeked outside the tree hole. With just a glance, he really did see 2 men in black robes walking towards him. They might have already discovered his whereabouts and were creeping towards him, trying to catch him off guard. Their black boots made no sound as they stepped on the grass. Even the most agile rabbit would make a louder sound than them. Gong Sun Chi threw away the banana peel in his hand and gripped the long sword at the side tightly. He was the disciple of the dragon god. Even if he died, he would die in battle. With this thought, he dashed out of the tree hole with his long sword and ran towards the forest on the left. When the 2 godly generals realized that their target had escaped, they didn't hide their whereabouts anymore. With a flap of their black robes, they chased after Gong Sun Chi. The 2 of them attacked from the left and right, one wielding a long sword and the other a trident, forming a perfect killing formation that was hard to defend against. Gong Sun Chi felt danger. He dashed a few steps forward and ran towards a tree that was more than a meter wide. He rushed up the tree trunk and ran straight towards the top of the tree. The black-robed godly general chased after him. The two of them continued to attack Gong Sun Chi from the left and right. When Gong Sun Chi was about to reach the top of the tree, he leaped forward. Riding on the wind on his sword, he was like an exiled immortal. Chapter 742. Blood drop by drop dripped down. The emerald green grass beneath his feet was dyed red, and even the moist soil was once again diluted into a puddle of mud. Because he had exerted too much strength, the wound under Gong Sun Chi's right rib was pulled open again. Blood seeped out from the wound and soaked his clothes, then dripped down from the corner of his clothes to the ground. His eyes were like a wolf's as he stared at the two men in black robes in front of him. They were two tall, blond men with pale skin and deep eyes that glowed with a green light. Gong Sun Chi was a wolf, a ferocious and relentless wounded wolf that would fight to the death. They were also like wolves, greedy, noble, and bloodthirsty wolves. Gong Sun Chi held the sword in his right hand. The body of the sword, called cloak, was trembling slightly, and a pool of blood flowed out from the groove of the sword, then flowed down the tip of the sword. The blood on the sword was the enemy's blood. Gong Sun Chi desperately stabbed the divine general with Neptune's trident, and paid the price of being ruthlessly slashed by the other divine general with a long saber. That saber slashed his back and he couldn't check the wound, but he could feel the flesh on his back being flipped open, and blood spurting out like a fountain. If it wasn't for his excellent dodging skills, he would have been slashed in half by that divine general. These divine servants indeed had powers that were incomprehensible to the outside world. Gong Sun Chi's legs were weak, and he felt that he could fall at any time. He had used up all the strength in his body, or rather all the strength in his body had been used up along with the blood that flowed out. In these 2 days he had lost too much blood. Because of his severe injuries, every movement he made required more than 10 times the strength than before. He used his strong willpower to control his body, as well as the pride that made him feel superior at all times. He didn't want them to tremble too obviously because that would be very embarrassing for him. Yes, he was such a proud man. In the Shen department he was very proud because his master was the divine dragon. In front of Fang Yen he was very proud because his master was the divine dragon. He was equally proud in front of these divine generals of the Millennium Palace because his master was the divine dragon, the most powerful man in Wuxia. These clowns. His expression was cold, but his heart was filled with disdain for these people. If I hadn't been injured, if I had been at my peak, I would have killed all of you with a swift knife. He knew that he couldn't bear the next charge in his current condition. However, the two immortal generals were still alive. Puff. Gong Sun Chi spat out a mouthful of blood. Blood dyed his mask red, leaving a choking sour taste in his throat. He reached out, pulled off his mask and threw it away. He faced the two divine generals with his cold, handsome face. Am I going to die? Gong Sun Chi muttered to himself. He took out a black ribbon from his bosom and used it to tie the sword tightly to his right hand. Because his hands had no strength left, he was afraid that he would throw the sword out when he slashed. As long as this arm was still in his body, he hoped that the cloak sword would still be in his hands. This was the dignity of a swordsman. Master, I'm sorry? Gong Sun Chi said with a face full of guilt. You're the number one in Wuxia, but I didn't even get to learn 1/10,000th of your martial arts. I wanted to challenge the heroes of the world after I mastered the martial arts and make a name for myself. It seems like I won't have the chance to do so now. That's good too. I'll take it that you don't have a disappointing disciple like me. He thought of Fang Yen again. He really hated this guy. However, at this moment he still hoped that he could escape from this dangerous place and return safely. What an annoying guy. Gong Sun Chi thought to himself. However, I still hope that you will be able to return safely. Because only then will we be able to return the treasures we stole, and only by returning the treasures will we be able to complete our mission. Even if I die, it won't be in vain. He tied the black ribbon into a dead knot, then used his teeth to pull it hard. Tui, he spat out a mouthful of saliva, then bent his body slightly and leaned his upper body forward in a charging posture. In his current state, it was already difficult for him to defend against the encirclement of the two divine generals. As long as they charged again he would be chopped into meat paste. However, the remaining energy in his body was just enough for him to make one more attack. An attack with no chance of survival. Even if he died it would be because he killed the enemy first, and then get killed. Thinking about it he still felt embarrassed. But what could he do? To Gong Sun Chi this was the most dignified way to die. Master. Gong Sun Chi thought for a while, then said in a deep voice, I can't kowtow to you anymore. He tightened his grip on the long sword in his hand, then rushed towards the two impatient divine generals. Rumble, a sudden clap of thunder tore through the sky, and a majestic rain poured down. Whoosh, the curtain of rain covered the heaven and earth, as if the whole world was covered by this rain of arrows. Swoosh, Gong Sun Chi fell to the ground, panting, his whole body submerged in the muddy water. There were countless wounds on his body, and a few of them had penetrated deep into his internal organs. The muddy water is too dirty, and the posture is too unsightly. Gong Sun Chi felt very uncomfortable. He really wanted to ask the two divine generals if they could help him up or change his posture. On one hand there was a language barrier, and on the other hand he was even more unwilling to ask for help. I'm going to die anyway and no one will see me when I die. He comforted himself. Kacha. The man holding the trident walked towards him step by step. Kacha, kacha. His boots stepped on the muddy water, making a piercing sound. Where is the divine weapon? He asked in a language that no one could understand. Gong Sun Chi lay there motionlessly, thinking, is this guy an idiot? If you don't speak the Wuxia language, who knows what you're saying? Hand over the divine weapon, or you'll go to hell. Gong Sun Chi closed his eyes powerlessly. He could feel the sharp weapon in the man's hand. Kacha. The man in black raised the trident high and smashed it towards Gong Sun Chi's head. Swish, a silver light flashed, and the man's raised arm fell to the ground, along with the trident in his hand. The divine general holding the long blade was shocked, and rushed towards the man in black who had suddenly appeared. The man in black advanced instead of retreating, raising his sword and rushing towards him. Kacha. The two brushed past each other. The man in black looked at him with a face full of unwillingness, unable to believe what had happened in front of him. Crack. The man in black's body was split into two, and the lower half of his body was still standing. Fresh blood sprayed into the air, and then it was slapped down by an even denser rain. The man with the trident looked at his arm that had been split in two, but he didn't feel any pain. He was stunned for a moment, and then the red light in his eyes blazed. Roar. Charge. His body leapt high into the air, and his good arm clenched into a fist. The fist carried a strong gust of wind, and countless raindrops smashed towards the man in black's head. Swish, another silver light flashed. The divine general's other arm was also cut off. His body flew past the man in black, blood spurting out of his body. Swish, 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 swish. The man in black's body counterattacked and he chased after him, striking continuously. When he stopped moving, the divine general's body could no longer stand up. What happened? Gong Sun Chi opened his eyes. I'm still alive? Crack, crack. Someone walked towards him step by step and then stood in front of him. He wanted to look up, but he didn't even have the strength to do so. Half of his face was buried in the muddy water, and he struggled to breathe. If the rain had been any heavier, his whole head would have been buried. At that time, even if the divine general of Millennium Palace didn't kill him, the rain would. Are you all right? A familiar voice sounded by his ear. Gong Sun Chi's mind shook, and his groggy consciousness became much clearer. Fang Yin? He asked aloud. He didn't speak when facing those divine generals, because he was worried that his words would expose his nationality. It's me. Fang Yin pulled down the mask on his face and looked at the motionless Gong Sun Chi and asked again, Are you all right? What do you think? Gong Sun Chi said through gritted teeth. He's already like this. Do you think I don't look like I'm fine? I think something is wrong. Fang Yin said seriously. I'll pull you up? Go ahead and pull me up. Do you think I'll refuse such a request? Thus, Fang Yin reached out and pulled Gong Sun Chi out of the muddy water. He leaned his upper body against a tree, and took out some ointment from his pocket to treat him. You don't look good. Fang Yin said as he inspected the wounds on his body. Why did you come back? Gong Sun Chi stared at Fang Yin and asked. Fang Yan's arrival gave him a glimmer of hope. He knew that perhaps he wouldn't die. I hate you very much. Fang Yin said. As he spoke, he poured the potion in the bottle on the biggest wound on Gong Sun Chi's body. One bottle of potion wasn't enough, and 2 bottles weren't enough either, so he took out all the potions he had. After thinking about it, he stuffed another bottle back. I also know you hate me. Fang Yin said. I do hate you. Gong Sun Chi's voice was weak, but he said stubbornly. But I still don't want you to die. Fang Yin said in a deep voice. You and your disciple owe me, I'll get it back from you. But now I can't let you be killed by these foreigners. I've said it before, we're brothers, comrades in arms. Gong Sun Chi's eyes were moist, and there was something tickling his throat, making him want to say something. You don't have to say anything, I can understand your feelings at this moment. I know what I'm doing is quite touching. Fang Yen patted his shoulder gently and said, I'm lying in the muddy water and can't move. Gong Sun Chi's voice was bitter, hidden in the sound of the wind and rain, emerging bit by bit. Don't tell anyone that you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.